The Israelites stood on the edge of a new era, a momentous occasion that marked the culmination of a long and arduous journey. Moses, their revered leader, had passed away, leaving behind a legacy of faith and perseverance. He had led them out of the oppressive chains of slavery in Egypt and guided them through the harsh wilderness for 40 long years, enduring trials and tribulations. Now they stood poised to inherit the land promised to their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, a land that held the hope of a prosperous future. This land was Canaan, a fertile region flowing with milk and honey, a place of abundance and opportunity. But it was also a land inhabited by various tribes, some of whom were hostile and powerful, presenting a formidable challenge. Joshua, Moses' chosen successor, had successfully led the Israelites across the Jordan River, a significant milestone in their journey. They achieved miraculous victories at Jericho and Ai, demonstrating their strength and the favor of their God. These victories established their presence in the land, signaling to all that the Israelites were a force to be reckoned with. The fear of the Lord fell upon the Canaanites as the Israelites demonstrated their military prowess and divine backing. However, the task of fully conquering the land was far from over. Many battles lay ahead, each requiring courage and faith. The Israelites, composed of 12 distinct tribes, faced the daunting challenge of dispossessing the current inhabitants and claiming their inheritance. They needed to divide the land amongst the tribes, ensuring that each received their rightful portion. This task would require unwavering faith, strategic alliances, and, above all, obedience to God's commands as they navigated the complexities of their new reality. The Book of Judges chronicles this tumultuous period, offering a detailed account of their struggles and triumphs. It is a story of triumphs and failures, obedience and disobedience, faith and compromise, reflecting the human condition in its entirety. It highlights the challenges of fulfilling their divine mandate, the constant battle between faith and doubt, unity and division. It also reveals the lasting consequences of their choices, the impact of their actions on future generations, and the enduring legacy of their journey. After Joshua's death, the Israelites faced the enormous task of securing the Promised Land. They needed direction. The land was vast, filled with numerous tribes and fortified cities. The Israelites were a people in transition, moving from a nomadic lifestyle to one of settlement and conquest. The weight of this responsibility was immense, and they knew they couldn't do it alone. They sought guidance from the Lord. In times of uncertainty, they turned to their faith, seeking divine intervention and wisdom. Their prayers were filled with hope and desperation, knowing that without the Lord's guidance, their efforts would be in vain. Who shall go up first to fight against the Canaanites? They asked. This question was not just about strategy, but about leadership and trust. The leaders gathered, discussing and debating, each aware of the gravity of the decision. They needed a clear sign, a divine endorsement to move forward. The Lord's answer was clear: Judah shall go up. This was a moment of revelation, a divine directive that would shape the course of their history. The clarity of the message brought a sense of purpose and direction to the people. I have given the land into his hand. Judges 1:1-2. These words were more than just a command. They were a promise that the Lord was with them, that victory was assured if they followed his will. This divine decree was significant. It was a turning point, a moment that would define the future of the Israelites. The proclamation echoed through the camp, filling the people with a renewed sense of hope and determination. Judah, named after Jacob's fourth son, was given the mantle of leadership. This was not just a random selection, but a fulfillment of a divine plan. Judah's lineage was one of strength and leadership, qualities that were now being called upon. They were to initiate the conquest, setting the tone for the other tribes. The preparations began in earnest, with warriors gearing up for battle, strategies being formed, and alliances being considered. The responsibility was immense, but so was their resolve. This was not a random choice. The selection of Judah was a strategic decision, one that took into account their strength, leadership, and the divine prophecy that had been spoken over them. The tribe of Judah held a special place in God's plan. Their role was pivotal, not just for the immediate conquest, but for the future of the Israelite nation. They were to be the standard bearers, the ones who would lead by example. Jacob had prophesied that the scepter, symbolizing rulership, would not depart from Judah, Genesis 49:10. This prophecy was now coming to fruition as Judah stepped into their role as leaders and warriors. This foreshadowed Judah's eventual role as the tribe from which King David and ultimately Jesus Christ would descend. The significance of this moment was not lost on the people. They were part of a divine narrative that stretched far beyond their immediate circumstances. The Lord's command was a test of Judah's obedience and a testament to their strength. It was a challenge that required faith, courage, and unwavering commitment to God's will, but the task ahead was daunting. The land was filled with formidable enemies, and the journey would be fraught with challenges. The warriors of Judah knew that their strength alone would not be enough. They needed divine intervention. The Canaanites were numerous and well established. Their cities were fortified, their warriors skilled, and their resolve strong. The Israelites were facing a formidable foe. They were skilled warriors with fortified cities. The Canaanites had the advantage of home ground, and their defenses were robust. The Israelites needed a strategy that would overcome these significant obstacles. Judah could not succeed alone. They needed allies. The realization that unity was essential for victory was a crucial moment. The strength of the Israelite tribes lay in their ability to work together, to support one another in the face of adversity. Recognizing this, the Lord instructed them, "Go up with your brother Simeon, and I will give them into your hand." Judges 1:3. This divine instruction was a reminder that they were not alone. With their brother tribe, Simeon, by their side, they were stronger, more capable, and ready to face the challenges ahead. The bond between the tribes was a testament to their shared faith and purpose, a unity that would lead them to victory. The alliance between Judah and Simeon proved formidable. Together they embarked on their campaign. Their first target, Bezek, a city ruled by the Canaanite king Adoni-Bezek. The battle was fierce, but the Israelites, empowered by divine favor, emerged victorious. They captured Adoni-Bezek, a significant victory that demoralized the Canaanites and bolstered the Israelites' morale. The victory at Bezek set the stage for further conquests. Judah and Simeon, united in purpose, swept through the southern regions of Canaan. They captured city after city, driving out the Canaanites and claiming the land as their inheritance. Their success was a testament to their military prowess, strategic planning, and, most importantly, their obedience to God's command. This alliance was not merely strategic, but symbolic. It highlighted the importance of unity and cooperation amongst the tribes. As long as the Israelites remained united and followed God's leadership, they were practically invincible. However, the book of Judges also reveals the dangers of disunity and disobedience, themes that would tragically play out in later chapters. The combined forces of Judah and Simeon continued their southward sweep through Canaan. Their victories were not limited to military conquests. They also involved subduing some Canaanite cities through treaties and tributes. This strategy, while seemingly less glorious than outright victory, was a practical approach to consolidating their control over the region. One such instance involved the capture of Jerusalem. This city, destined to become the capital of Israel under King David, was inhabited by the Jebusites. The text tells us that Judah captured it and struck it with the edge of the sword and set the city on fire. This victory was significant, marking a major step in establishing their dominance in the region. However, the text also reveals that the Jebusites were not entirely driven out. They continued to dwell in Jerusalem, a detail that foreshadows future conflict. This partial victory, along with others mentioned in the chapter, highlights a recurring theme: the Israelites' tendency to fall short of complete obedience to God's command to utterly drive out the inhabitants of the land. The capture of King Adoni-Bezek offers a glimpse into the brutality of the times and the concept of divine justice. In the ancient world, power was often maintained through fear and ruthless actions, and Adoni-Bezek was no exception. Adoni-Bezek, whose very name means Lord of Bezek, was a powerful and ruthless ruler. His reign was marked by his unyielding grip on power and his willingness to go to any lengths to maintain his dominance. After his capture, he made a chilling confession. This confession not only revealed his own brutal nature, but also highlighted the harsh realities of ancient warfare and the lengths to which rulers would go to assert their authority. He admitted to mutilating 70 kings by cutting off their thumbs and big toes. This act of mutilation was not just a physical punishment, but a symbolic gesture meant to strip these kings of their power and dignity and forcing them to eat scraps under his table. This act of humiliation was designed to break their spirit and serve as a stark reminder of his dominance over them. His gruesome actions were a testament to his cruelty and his belief in asserting dominance through humiliation. Adoni-Bezek's reign was characterized by fear and subjugation, and his methods were a reflection of the brutal times in which he lived. However, his reign of terror was brought to an abrupt end by the Israelites. The Israelites, known for their own fierce warriors and strategic prowess, managed to capture this once feared ruler. Ironically, Adoni-Bezek suffered the same fate he inflicted upon others. This twist of fate served as a powerful example of the concept of divine justice, where the punishment mirrors the crime. The Israelites cut off his thumbs and big toes, rendering him powerless and humiliated, just as he had done to so many others. This act was not just a form of retribution, but also a symbolic gesture of justice being served, and he died in Jerusalem. His death marked the end of a brutal chapter in history, but his story continued to be told as a cautionary tale. Adoni-Bezek's story serves as a reminder of the cyclical nature of violence and the concept of divine retribution. The idea that one's actions can come back to haunt them is a powerful theme that resonates through history. His fate was not merely a matter of revenge, but a consequence of his own brutal actions. The Israelites' actions were seen as a form of divine justice, where the wicked are punished in a manner befitting their crimes. His confession, "As I have done, so God has repaid me," underscores the belief that God judges the actions of the wicked. This statement reflects a deep-seated belief in the moral order of the universe, where justice is ultimately served, and the wicked are held accountable for their deeds. The story of Adoni-Bezek has been preserved through ancient texts and historical records, serving as a testament to the enduring nature of these moral lessons. It reminds us that the actions we take can have far-reaching consequences, and that justice in one form or another will always prevail. In the end, Adoni-Bezek's tale is a powerful reminder of the importance of justice and the belief that no one is above the moral laws that govern human behavior. His story continues to be a poignant example of how the scales of justice eventually balance, even in the most brutal of times.
The Book of Judges begins with a solemn scene, a moment steeped in history and divine significance. The Israelites, having crossed the Jordan River and witnessed the miraculous fall of Jericho, found themselves at a place called Bokim. This was not just a geographical location, but a spiritual crossroads, a place where their faith and commitment would be tested. It was here that the angel of the Lord appeared, not with words of congratulations or praise, but with a stark reminder, a declaration of a covenant broken. The appearance of the angel was a divine intervention, a moment of reckoning for the people of Israel. The angel reminded them of the promise made to their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These patriarchs had walked with God, had trusted in his promises, and had been assured of a future for their descendants in a land of abundance. He spoke of the covenant, the sacred agreement that bound God to his people, a promise to bring them into a land flowing with milk and honey. This land was not just a physical territory, but a symbol of God's provision, blessing, and faithfulness. But the Israelites, standing on the precipice of this promised land, had already begun to stray. Their hearts were turning away from the God who had delivered them from the bondage of Egypt and had guided them through the wilderness with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The angel's words were not accusatory but laced with sorrow, reflecting the heart of a God grieved by the actions of his chosen people. It was a moment of divine lament, a sorrowful acknowledgement of the people's unfaithfulness. Their actions were not merely a breach of contract, but a betrayal of a relationship, a turning away from the one who had delivered them from slavery and led them through the wilderness with unwavering faithfulness. This betrayal was a deep wound, a rupture in the divine human relationship that had been forged through trials and triumphs. This divine confrontation at Bokim serves as a stark beginning to the Book of Judges, setting the stage for a tumultuous period in Israel's history. It was a time marked by a cycle of disobedience, consequence, and redemption, a pattern that would repeat itself throughout the narrative. The story of Bochim is a poignant reminder of the fragility of human faithfulness and the enduring mercy of God, a theme that continues to resonate thousands of years later. The lessons from Bochim echo through the ages, calling us to reflect on our own commitments and the covenants we hold dear. Following the Israelites' encounter with the angel of the Lord at Bochim, the narrative takes a poignant turn with the passing of Joshua. A faithful servant of God, Joshua led the Israelites into the Promised Land, securing victories against formidable enemies and overseeing the division of the land among the 12 tribes. His leadership was marked by unwavering faith and obedience to God's commands. He reminded the Israelites of their covenant with God, urging them to remain faithful to the one who had brought them out of Egypt and into a land of their own. Joshua's death marked the end of an era, leaving a void in leadership and a generation that had not personally witnessed the miracles at the Red Sea or the crossing of the Jordan. This transition would prove to be a pivotal moment in Israel's history, testing their resolve and commitment to the covenant. The question lingered: would this new generation, raised in the relative peace and prosperity of the Promised Land, remember the lessons of the past and cling to the God of their fathers? With Joshua's passing, the Israelites entered a period of spiritual decline. The generation that had witnessed the Lord's mighty acts firsthand was fading, and a new generation, unfamiliar with the wilderness wanderings and the conquest of Canaan, arose. This new generation, born in the relative peace and prosperity of the Promised Land, began to lose sight of their covenant with God. The allure of Canaanite culture, with its fertility gods and rituals, proved too tempting to resist. They allowed the ways of their pagan neighbors to infiltrate their own, embracing idolatry and forsaking the worship of the one true God. They intermarried with the Canaanites, adopting their customs and practices, allowing the line between the sacred and the profane to blur. What began as subtle compromises gradually morphed into outright rebellion. The Israelites, once a people set apart, began to resemble the very nations they were meant to displace. Their hearts, once filled with gratitude and awe, grew cold and indifferent to the God who had delivered them. This turning away from the covenant, this gradual erosion of faith, would have dire consequences for the Israelites, plunging them into a cycle of sin and suffering, a stark reminder of the cost of spiritual apathy. Section 4. The Price of Infidelity, Consequences of Disobedience. This section delves into the profound and far-reaching repercussions that befell the Israelites as a result of their disobedience to the covenant they had made with God. It is a sobering reminder of the cost of infidelity and the heavy price of turning away from divine guidance. The Israelites' drift from the covenant did not go unnoticed. Their gradual departure from the path laid out for them was observed by many, both within and outside their community. This drift was not a sudden event, but a slow erosion of their commitment to the laws and principles that had once defined their identity and purpose. Their disobedience, their embrace of idolatry, and their disregard for the laws God had given them brought about a series of consequences that shook them to their core. The allure of pagan worship and the seductive practices of neighboring cultures led them astray, causing them to forsake the commandments that were meant to protect and guide them. The Book of Judges paints a vivid picture of the turmoil that engulfed the Israelites as they faced the repercussions of their actions. This period was marked by a cycle of sin, oppression, repentance, and deliverance, highlighting the instability and suffering that came with their disobedience. Their enemies, whom they were meant to drive out, rose up and oppressed them. These adversaries, once seen as conquerable, now became a constant threat, exploiting Israel's weakened state and lack of unity. The Israelites found themselves besieged on all sides, their land and resources plundered by those they had failed to expel. Forgetting the strength and deliverance they once found in the Lord, they found themselves at the mercy of those who worshipped false gods. Their cries for help, once answered by divine intervention, now seemed to fall on deaf ears as they continued to stray from their faith. The Philistines to the west, a formidable and relentless foe, took advantage of Israel's vulnerability, launching raids and incursions that further destabilized the region. The Moabites to the east, emboldened by Israel's weakened state, also seized the opportunity to invade and subjugate the Israelites, adding to their woes and suffering. And the Canaanites to the north all took advantage of Israel's weakened state, subjecting them to raids, plunder, and subjugation. These relentless attacks from all directions left the Israelites in a state of constant fear and insecurity. The very land that flowed with milk and honey, a testament to God's faithfulness, became a battleground, a constant reminder of their broken covenant. The once fertile and prosperous land now bore the scars of conflict and neglect, a stark contrast to the promise it once held. They experienced famine, drought, and economic hardship, their cries for help echoing unanswered as long as they remained entrenched in their idolatry. The natural calamities that befell them were seen as a direct consequence of their spiritual failings, further deepening their despair. Their disobedience had not only severed their relationship with God, but had also plunged them into chaos and despair. The social and moral fabric of their society began to unravel, leading to internal strife and a loss of communal harmony. The consequences of their actions served as a bitter harvest, a stark reminder that faithfulness to God was not merely a matter of religious observance but a matter of survival. The withered crops and barren fields symbolized the spiritual barrenness that had taken root in their hearts, underscoring the vital importance of maintaining their covenant with God. Section 5. The cycle of sin and deliverance, the role of the judges. As the Israelites faced the consequences of their disobedience, the book of Judges introduces a recurring theme: the cycle of sin, oppression, repentance, and deliverance. This cycle is a powerful reminder of the human tendency to stray from righteousness and the enduring mercy of God. Each cycle begins with the Israelites falling back into idolatry, abandoning the worship of the one true God for the allure of pagan deities. These idols, often representing fertility, wealth, or power, seduced the Israelites away from their covenant with God. This spiritual adultery invariably leads to oppression, as God allows their enemies to conquer and subjugate them. The Israelites' disobedience results in their suffering under the harsh rule of foreign powers, a direct consequence of their turning away from God. It is in their despair, when all hope seems lost, that the Israelites remember the God of their fathers. The weight of their suffering brings them to their knees, and they begin to recall the mighty deeds God performed for their ancestors. They cry out for deliverance, their hearts heavy with remorse for their infidelity. Their prayers are filled with sorrow and a genuine desire to return to the path of righteousness. It is in these moments of genuine repentance that God, in His infinite mercy, raises up judges. These judges are divinely appointed leaders, chosen to guide the Israelites back to faithfulness and to deliver them from their oppressors. These judges were not merely political or military leaders, but individuals chosen by God and empowered by His Spirit to deliver the Israelites from their enemies. They were endowed with wisdom, courage, and the ability to inspire their people to rise against their oppressors. They came from diverse backgrounds, some from humble beginnings, others from positions of influence. Regardless of their origins, each judge was uniquely equipped by God to fulfill their mission. Deborah, a prophetess and judge, rallied the Israelites against the Canaanite general Sisera. Her leadership and prophetic insight were instrumental in securing a decisive victory for the Israelites. Gideon, a reluctant leader, overcame his doubts and insecurities to lead a small band of warriors against the Midianites. His story is a testament to the power of faith and the importance of trusting in God's plan, even when it seems impossible. Samson, blessed with supernatural strength, waged a one-man war against the Philistines. His feats of strength and his ultimate sacrifice highlight the complex nature of his character and the profound impact of his actions on the Israelites' struggle for freedom. Each judge served as a vessel of God's grace, a testament to His unwavering love for His people despite their repeated betrayals. Through their leadership, the Israelites experienced periods of peace and prosperity, only to fall back into sin once more, continuing the cycle. The stories of the judges are not just historical accounts, but lessons for future generations. They remind us of the importance of faithfulness, the consequences of disobedience, and the boundless mercy of God. Each judge's story is a chapter in the larger narrative of God's redemptive plan for humanity. Today, as we reflect on the role of the judges, we are called to examine our own lives. Are we faithful to our commitments? Do we seek God's guidance in times of trouble? The legacy of the judges challenges us to remain steadfast in our faith and to trust in God's deliverance, no matter the circumstances. Just as God raised up judges in ancient times, He continues to raise up leaders today. These modern-day leaders, inspired by the same Spirit, work to bring justice, peace, and hope to our communities. They remind us that God's work is ongoing and that each of us has a role to play in His divine plan. The role of the judges is a powerful testament to God's enduring love and faithfulness. It is a call to action for each of us to live lives of integrity, to seek justice, and to trust in God's unfailing mercy. As we honor the legacy of the judges, let us strive to be vessels of God's grace in our own time. After Joshua led the Israelites into the Promised Land, a new chapter in their history began. Joshua had been a formidable leader, guiding the Israelites with strength and faith. Under his command, they had conquered much of Canaan, securing a foothold in the land promised to them by God. However, the conquest was far from complete. Pockets of resistance remained, and the land was still dotted with Canaanite strongholds. Without Joshua's strong leadership, the Israelites faced a new challenge. They were no longer a unified force marching behind one man. Instead, they lived as 12 tribes, each with its own territory and leadership. This disunity made them vulnerable to external threats and internal strife. The absence of a central government or a single leader to unite them led to a period of turbulence and uncertainty. The Israelites needed guidance, and this need gave rise to the era of the judges. These judges were not like modern-day judges sitting in courtrooms. They were more like charismatic military leaders chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from their enemies. The judges were a diverse group of individuals, each with unique strengths and weaknesses. They were warriors, prophets, and leaders who rose to prominence in times of crisis. Their stories are recorded in the Book of Judges, a collection of tales that highlight their bravery, cunning, and sometimes brutal violence. These stories are not just exciting adventure narratives, they reveal a deeper truth about the Israelites' relationship with God. The Book of Judges shows a cyclical pattern of sin, punishment, repentance, and deliverance. The Israelites would turn away from God, falling into sin and idolatry. As a result, they would face oppression and hardship at the hands of their enemies. In their distress, they would cry out to God for help, and He would raise up a judge to deliver them. This cycle repeated itself throughout the period of the Judges, highlighting the Israelites' struggle to remain faithful to God. The stories of the judges are filled with moments of incredible bravery and cunning. Figures like Deborah, Gideon, and Samson stand out as examples of God's chosen leaders. Deborah, a prophetess and warrior, led the Israelites to victory against their oppressors. Gideon, with his small band of warriors, defeated a much larger enemy force through clever tactics and divine intervention. Samson, known for his immense strength, fought against the Philistines, though his story is also one of personal failure and redemption. These stories are not just historical accounts, they carry profound spiritual lessons. They remind us of the importance of obedience to God and the consequences of straying from His path. The Book of Judges is pivotal in understanding the early history of Israel. It bridges the gap between the conquest under Joshua and the establishment of the monarchy. It's a story of a people struggling to hold on to their faith in their land, a people constantly tempted by the gods and practices of their neighbors. Through their triumphs and failures, the judges remind us of the importance of obedience to God and the consequences of straying from His path. The era of the judges was a time of great challenges and significant lessons for the Israelites. It set the stage for the eventual rise of the monarchy and the establishment of a more unified nation under kings like Saul, David, and Solomon. The legacy of the judges is a testament to the enduring struggle of the Israelites to remain faithful to their covenant with God, despite the many obstacles they faced. God had commanded the Israelites to drive out the inhabitants of Canaan completely. This was not just a military directive but a spiritual mandate, intended to keep the Israelites pure and devoted to Him alone. However, after Joshua's death, they failed to fully obey this command. The loss of their strong leader left them vulnerable and uncertain, and they began to falter in their mission. They made treaties with some groups and allowed others to remain in their midst. These decisions were often driven by fear, convenience, or a desire for peace, but they had long-lasting repercussions. The Book of Judges tells us that God intentionally left these nations unconquered. This was a divine strategy, a way to test the Israelites' faithfulness and commitment to His commandments. They served as a test for the Israelites, a way to see if they would remain faithful to Him or be drawn into idolatry. The presence of these foreign nations was a constant temptation, a daily challenge to their loyalty. The presence of these foreign nations was a constant temptation. The allure of new and exotic gods, the promise of prosperity and fertility, was hard to resist. The Canaanites worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, and their religious practices often involved fertility cults and ritual prostitution. These practices were not only spiritually corrupt, but also morally degrading. To the Israelites raised in the strict monotheism of Egypt, these practices were alluring and dangerous. The contrast between their austere worship of Yahweh and the sensual, indulgent rituals of the Canaanites was stark. The book of Judges describes how, time and again, the Israelites were drawn to the Canaanite gods, abandoning their own God who had brought them out of slavery and into the Promised Land. This cycle of faithfulness and apostasy repeated itself throughout their history. This failure to drive out the Canaanites had serious consequences for the Israelites. It led to periods of oppression and suffering as they faced the repercussions of their disobedience. It led them into religious syncretism, a blending of Yahweh worship with Canaanite practices. This mixing of beliefs diluted their faith and compromised their identity as God's chosen people. They began to worship Baal and Asherah, deities associated with fertility and prosperity. These gods promised immediate rewards, unlike the often unseen and future-oriented promises of Yahweh. They built altars and high places for these gods, places strictly forbidden by Yahweh. These high places became centers of idolatry and moral corruption. They forgot the covenant they had made with God at Mount Sinai, the covenant that set them apart as His chosen people. This forgetfulness led to a loss of their unique identity and purpose, causing them to stray further from the path God had set for them. The cyclical pattern of the book of Judges begins with the Israelites falling into sin, a recurring theme that underscores the human tendency to stray from divine guidance. This disobedience inevitably leads to punishment by God, a divine response to their wayward actions. Judges 3:7 tells us that the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs. These idols represented the false gods of the surrounding nations, leading the Israelites astray. This apostasy, this turning away from God, always had consequences. The community's spiritual decline brought about tangible suffering and distress. In this case, God allowed Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Aram-Naharaim, to conquer Israel. This foreign domination was a direct result of their unfaithfulness, a stark reminder of the cost of abandoning their covenant with God. For 8 years the Israelites endured his oppressive rule, a period marked by hardship and subjugation. The weight of their disobedience was felt in every aspect of their lives, but God, in His mercy, always provided a way back. Despite their repeated failures, His compassion never wavered. When the Israelites cried out for help, He raised up a deliverer, Othniel, Caleb's younger brother. Othniel's emergence as a leader was a beacon of hope for the beleaguered nation. Othniel is described as a man of valor and military skill. His courage and strategic acumen were crucial in the fight against their oppressors. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, empowering him to defeat Cushan-Rishathaim and free the Israelites from oppression. This divine empowerment was a testament to God's enduring support for His people. The land had rest for 40 years, a time of peace and prosperity under Othniel's judgeship. This period of tranquility was a direct result of their return to faithfulness. Othniel's story, though brief, establishes the template for the judges who follow. His leadership set a standard for future deliverers, combining divine guidance with human bravery. He embodies the ideal judge, a courageous leader, empowered by God, who delivers Israel from oppression. His life serves as an enduring example of what it means to be a true servant of God. His story is a reminder that even when the Israelites strayed from God, He remained faithful to His covenant. This faithfulness was a cornerstone of their relationship with the divine. He was always ready to forgive and restore them when they repented and turned back to Him. This cycle of sin, punishment, repentance, and deliverance is a powerful testament to God's unending mercy and love for His people. The cycle of sin and deliverance continues with the story of Ehud. Once again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. This time God allowed Eglon, the king of Moab, to subjugate them. Eglon, a cruel and ruthless tyrant, ruled over Israel for 18 years, a period marked by suffering and humiliation for the Israelites. However, God raised up another deliverer, Ehud, a left-handed man from the tribe of Benjamin. Ehud's story is one of cunning and daring. He crafted a double-edged sword and strapped it to his right thigh, concealing it from view. He then went to pay tribute to Eglon, pretending to be a loyal subject. When he was alone with the king, Ehud used his left hand to draw the sword, plunging it into Eglon's belly. Eglon was so obese that the sword disappeared into his fat, and Ehud escaped unnoticed. Ehud then rallied the Israelites and led them in a revolt against the Moabites. They slaughtered 10,000 Moabite soldiers, throwing Eglon's army into disarray. Ehud's victory was decisive, and it ushered in 80 years of peace for Israel. Ehud's story, like Othniel's, demonstrates God's willingness to use unconventional methods and seemingly ordinary people to achieve his purposes. Sandwiched between the stories of Ehud and Deborah is the brief account of Shamgar, another judge who delivered Israel. Unlike the detailed narratives of Othniel and Ehud, Shamgar's story is concise, almost enigmatic. Judges 3:31 tells us that after Ehud came Shamgar son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel. This single verse is all we know about Shamgar's judgeship. We don't know his tribe, his background, or the circumstances surrounding his act of heroism. Yet, despite its brevity, Shamgar's story is significant. It reminds us that God can use anyone, regardless of their background or social standing, to accomplish his will. Shamgar, armed only with an ox goad, a simple farming tool, single-handedly defeated 600 Philistines, demonstrating extraordinary courage and strength. Shamgar's story serves as a powerful reminder that God often works through unexpected means. He is not bound by human limitations or expectations. He can use a simple farmer, armed with a tool of his trade, to achieve victory over a formidable enemy. Shamgar's story, though brief, is a testament to the power of faith and courage, even in the face of overwhelming odds.
The Book of Judges paints a vivid tapestry of ancient Israel, a time marked by both faithfulness and failure. It was a period of great turmoil and transformation, where the people of Israel often found themselves caught in a cycle of sin, suffering, repentance, and deliverance. This era was characterized by the rise of various leaders known as judges, who were chosen by God to guide and deliver his people. Amidst the cycles of sin and redemption, Deborah stands out as a beacon of hope and courage. Her story is one of remarkable strength and unwavering faith, a narrative that shines brightly in the annals of history. Deborah was not just any leader. She was a woman who broke through the barriers of her time, standing tall in a male-dominated society. She was a woman of many roles, a prophetess, a judge, and a military strategist. As a prophetess, she conveyed God's messages to the people, offering guidance and wisdom. As a judge, she settled disputes and provided leadership, ensuring justice and order. And as a military strategist, she led her people to victory, demonstrating her exceptional skills in planning and execution. But above all, she was a woman of unwavering faith in God. Her deep spiritual connection and trust in the divine were the bedrock of her strength. Deborah's faith was not just a personal belief, it was a guiding force that influenced her every decision and action. She sought God's will in all things, and her reliance on him was evident in the way she led her people. Deborah's story is unique in a patriarchal society. In a time when women were often relegated to the background, she emerged as a prominent leader. Her rise to prominence was not just a testament to her abilities, but also a powerful statement about the potential of women to lead and inspire. Deborah's leadership challenged the societal norms of her time and paved the way for future generations of women. She defied cultural norms and emerged as a leader, demonstrating that God's anointing transcends gender. Her story is a powerful reminder that leadership is not confined to a specific gender or background. Deborah's life and actions showed that when God calls someone to lead, he equips them with the necessary wisdom, strength, and courage to fulfill their mission. Her wisdom and courage inspired a nation to rise against oppression and experience God's liberating power. Deborah's leadership was instrumental in rallying the Israelites to stand up against their oppressors. Her strategic mind and fearless spirit were key in securing victory and freedom for her people. She not only led them in battle, but also inspired them to believe in their own strength and in God's power to deliver them. Deborah's life serves as a powerful reminder that God can use anyone, regardless of their background or gender, to accomplish his purposes. Her story is a testament to the fact that divine purpose knows no boundaries. Deborah's legacy continues to inspire countless individuals to recognize their own potential and to trust in God's plan for their lives. Her story encourages us to embrace our God-given potential and to step out in faith, even when faced with daunting challenges. Deborah's example teaches us that with faith, courage and determination, we can overcome any obstacle and achieve great things. Her life is a beacon of hope, urging us to rise above our circumstances and to lead with integrity and conviction. For 20 long and grueling years, the Israelites had groaned under the oppressive rule of King Jabin of Canaan. The weight of his tyranny was felt in every corner of their lives, from the fields they toiled in to the homes they sought refuge in. His military commander, Sisera, was a cruel and ruthless warrior who terrorized the land with his 900 iron chariots. These chariots, symbols of his unyielding power, would thunder across the plains, leaving destruction and fear in their wake. The Israelites, disarmed and demoralized, had lost their fighting spirit. Their weapons were taken, their will to resist crushed. They were a people who had forgotten what it meant to stand tall and fight for their freedom. Fear had become a suffocating blanket, extinguishing their hope for a brighter future. Every day was a struggle for survival, and the once proud nation was now a shadow of its former self. The once vibrant nation, chosen by God to be a light to the world, was shrouded in darkness. The stories of their ancestors who had crossed the Red Sea and conquered mighty foes seemed like distant legends, irrelevant to their current suffering. The people had forgotten the mighty acts of God who had delivered them from slavery in Egypt. The miracles that had once defined their identity were now buried under layers of despair and hopelessness. Their hearts were far from their God, and their spirits were crushed under the weight of oppression. The songs of joy and praise that once filled their gatherings were replaced by cries of anguish and sorrow. They cried out to God for deliverance, but their cries seemed to echo unanswered. The heavens appeared silent, and the people wondered if they had been abandoned by the very God who had once called them his own. Little did they know that God was already at work, raising up a deliverer in their midst, a woman named Deborah, who would shatter the chains of oppression and lead them to victory. Deborah, a prophetess and judge, was a beacon of hope in these dark times. She was wise, courageous, and filled with the Spirit of God. Under the shade of a palm tree, Deborah would sit and render judgment for the people of Israel. Her wisdom and fairness were renowned, and people from all over the land would come to seek her counsel. She was a symbol of justice and righteousness in a time when both seemed scarce. One day, Deborah summoned Barak, a military leader, and delivered a message from God. She told him to gather 10,000 men and lead them to Mount Tabor, for God had promised to deliver Sisera and his army into their hands. Barak, though hesitant, agreed to go, but only if Deborah would accompany him. Together, Deborah and Barak rallied the Israelites. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of the people. Men who had once been paralyzed by fear now found the courage to take up arms and fight for their freedom. The battle was fierce, but the Israelites fought with a newfound determination. With Deborah's leadership and Barak's military prowess, they managed to turn the tide against Sisera's formidable forces. The iron chariots that had once seemed invincible were no match for the power of a united and determined people. Sisera, seeing his army defeated, fled the battlefield in a desperate attempt to save his own life. The once feared commander was now a fugitive, running from the very people he had terrorized for so long. The Israelites, victorious and free, rejoiced and praised God for their deliverance. The dark days of oppression were over, and a new era of hope and renewal had begun. Deborah's leadership had not only brought them victory, but had also restored their faith in God and in themselves. Deborah's song of victory echoed through the land, a testament to the power of faith and the resilience of the human spirit. Her story would be remembered for generations, a reminder that even in the darkest times there is always hope. Deborah was a woman of remarkable spiritual authority. She stood out in a time when female leaders were rare, and her presence commanded respect and admiration. As a prophetess, she heard the voice of God and conveyed his messages to the people. Her connection with the divine was profound, and she was known for her ability to interpret God's will with clarity and conviction. She served as a judge, settling disputes and providing wise counsel. Her judgments were fair and just, and she was known for her ability to see through deception and uncover the truth. Her wisdom and discernment were renowned throughout the land, and people traveled from far and wide to seek her guidance. They came with their problems and left with solutions, grateful for her insight and understanding. Deborah's leadership was not confined to the spiritual realm. She was also a military leader, guiding her people in times of conflict and war. She was a woman of action, unafraid to confront injustice and inspire her people to fight for their freedom. Her courage in the face of adversity was legendary, and she led by example, showing that true leadership requires both strength and compassion. She embodied the rare combination of spiritual depth and practical wisdom. Her decisions were guided by her faith, but she also understood the complexities of human nature and the challenges of daily life. Under the shade of a palm tree known as the Palm of Deborah, she held court, offering guidance and justice. This place became a symbol of her leadership, where people knew they could find fairness and mercy. She was a beacon of hope in a time of despair, a symbol of God's unwavering faithfulness to his people. Her legacy lives on as a testament to the power of faith, wisdom, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Deborah's story is not just one of spiritual leadership, but also of strategic brilliance. She led her people to victory against their oppressors, showing that true leadership transcends gender and societal expectations. Her teachings and prophecies were recorded and passed down through generations, inspiring countless others to rise above their circumstances and lead with integrity and faith. Deborah's life is a powerful reminder that one person's faith and determination can change the course of history. She remains a shining example of what it means to lead with both heart and mind, and her story continues to inspire and uplift those who seek to make a difference in the world. One day, God spoke to Deborah, giving her a clear directive. She was to summon a man named Barak, a brave warrior from the tribe of Naphtali. God had chosen Barak to lead the Israelite army against the Canaanites. Deborah was to relay this message and assure Barak of God's presence and power in the coming battle. Deborah wasted no time. She immediately sent for Barak and delivered God's message with unwavering conviction. She outlined God's plan. Barak was to assemble 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead them to Mount Tabor. The time had come for the Israelites to rise up and fight for their freedom. God was on their side, and he would deliver them from the hand of their enemies. Barak, though known for his courage, hesitated when he heard Deborah's words. He was acutely aware of the might of Sisera's army, with their iron chariots and superior numbers. Fear began to creep into his heart, threatening to cripple his resolve. "If you go with me," Barak said to Deborah, "I will go, but if you don't go with me, I won't go." Barak, though courageous, sought the assurance of God's presence through Deborah. He recognized the vital role her faith and leadership played in this battle. Deborah agreed to accompany Barak, but she warned him that the glory of the victory would not be his. God had already decreed that Sisera would be defeated by the hand of a woman. With renewed determination, Barak gathered his men and prepared for battle. The stage was set for a confrontation of epic proportions. Barak and his 10,000 men descended from Mount Tabor, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The Canaanite army, led by Sisera, awaited them in the valley below, their iron chariots gleaming menacingly in the sun. The battle raged fiercely. The Israelites, though outnumbered, fought with the fury of men determined to reclaim their freedom. Suddenly, the tide turned. A torrential downpour transformed the battlefield into a muddy quagmire, rendering Sisera's chariots useless. The Canaanites, caught off guard by the sudden deluge and the ferocity of the Israelite attack, panicked and fled in disarray. The waters of the Kishon River, swollen by the rain, swept away many of the fleeing Canaanites.
The Song of Deborah, a victory march played on the trumpets of time, an anthem of faith sung across the ages, a story of courage whispered to every generation. It's a song for the weary, a ballad for the burdened, a promise for the faint of heart. In the heart of ancient Israel, long before kings or kingdoms, lived a woman named Deborah. She was a woman of God, a prophetess, and a judge. Her wisdom was a beacon, her counsel a refuge, her presence a source of strength for a nation yearning for peace. Deborah's story is our story, a reminder that God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Deborah held court under a palm tree. This was no ordinary tree, but a symbol of wisdom and justice, a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. Imagine the scene, the rustle of leaves, the murmur of voices seeking her wisdom, the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. People from all walks of life came to her, their faces etched with worry and hope, seeking guidance and solace. Yet Deborah was not daunted. She knew her calling, trusted her God, and led with unwavering faith. Her confidence was not born of arrogance, but of a deep-seated belief in her divine mission. She prayed fervently, seeking strength and clarity, and her determination never wavered. She was more than a judge, she was a mother to a nation in need. Her compassion knew no bounds, and her wisdom was sought by many. She comforted the distressed, advised the confused, and stood as a pillar of strength for her people. Her heart ached for her people, oppressed and afraid under the cruel reign of King Jabin of Canaan. The sorrow in her eyes mirrored the suffering of her nation, and she felt their pain as her own. For 20 long years his iron fist had crushed their spirits. The people of Israel lived in constant fear, their lives overshadowed by the tyranny of their oppressors. The soldiers enforced his rule with brutality, leaving the people in a state of perpetual despair. Their hope, like a flickering candle, threatened to be extinguished by the winds of oppression. Every day was a struggle to keep that flame alive, to believe that deliverance would come. But God saw their plight. He heard their cries. The prayers of the desperate reached the heavens, and divine light began to pierce through the darkness. He would send them a deliverer. He would raise up Deborah. She was chosen, not just for her wisdom and strength, but for her unwavering faith and her deep love for her people. She stood strong, a beacon of hope, ready to lead her nation to freedom. Go, God told her, summon Barak. Tell him to take 10,000 men to Mount Tabor. I will deliver Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, into your hands. Deborah didn't hesitate. She called for Barak, a brave warrior, and relayed God's command. The time for mourning was over. The season of fear had passed. The hour for deliverance had arrived. Imagine the weight of those words, the risk, the uncertainty, the audacity of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. Barak, though a mighty warrior, hesitated. "If you go with me, I will go, but if you don't go with me, I will not go," he declared. He knew the battle belonged to the Lord, but he also knew the strength and comfort of Deborah's faith. He needed her presence, her unwavering belief in God's promise. Deborah agreed to go, but she added, "However, there will be no glory for you in the course you are taking, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman." Her words were not a rebuke but a prophecy. Victory would be theirs, but it would come through an unexpected vessel. God's ways are rarely our ways, but they are always perfect. Section 5. The Enemy at the Gate. The stage was set for a confrontation of epic proportions. On one side stood the mighty Canaanite army, led by the ruthless Sisera, boasting 900 iron chariots, the pinnacle of military might. On the other side, the fledgling Israelite army, armed with faith and the promise of God's presence. The Canaanites, confident in their superior numbers and technology, underestimated the Israelites' resolve and the power of their unseen God. They underestimated the courage that faith ignites in the hearts of the faithful. Section 6. March to Mount Tabor. Barak, with Deborah by his side, rallied the Israelites. They climbed the slopes of Mount Tabor, their hearts pounding, their prayers ascending to the heavens. Below, the Canaanite army awaited, a sea of iron and aggression. The air crackled with anticipation. A hush fell over the battlefield. The fate of a nation hung in the balance. Section 7. The heavens roar. Then the command rang out. The Israelites charged down the mountainside, their faith their shield, their courage their sword. As they did, the heavens opened. The downpour wasn't a gentle spring rain, but a raging torrent, a deluge that transformed the battlefield into a muddy quagmire. The mighty iron chariots of Sisera, once symbols of invincibility, became bogged down, useless, their advantage neutralized by the fury of the storm. God was fighting for them. What the Canaanites intended for evil, God transformed into an instrument of deliverance. Section 8. The waters rise. The Kishon River, usually a lazy meandering stream, became a raging torrent, its waters rising to consume the fleeing Canaanites. Panic gripped their hearts as they realized the battle was lost, their might no match for the God of Israel. Sisera, desperate to escape the carnage, abandoned his chariot and fled on foot, seeking refuge in the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. He thought he had found safety, but he had stumbled into the hands of destiny. Section 9. Victory and Thanksgiving. Jael, a woman of quiet courage, welcomed Sisera into her tent. As he slept exhausted and defeated, Jael took a tent peg and a hammer, and drove the peg through his temple, pinning him to the ground, a testament to the saying, "What goes around comes around." When Barak arrived searching for the defeated general, Jael showed him the fallen foe. The victory was complete, the enemy was vanquished, Israel was free. Deborah and Barak sang a song of victory, a hymn of praise to the God who had fought for them and given them victory. Section 10. Lessons from a distant battlefield. The Song of Deborah is more than just an ancient battle cry. It is a poetic narrative that captures the essence of a pivotal moment in history. It is a timeless message of hope, a testament to the power of faith, and a call to action for those who believe in a higher purpose. This ancient song serves as a reminder that God can use anyone, regardless of their gender, background, or perceived weaknesses, to accomplish his purposes. It transcends time and culture, speaking to the universal human experience. Deborah was not a queen or a warrior, yet she led a nation to freedom. Her story is one of courage, wisdom, and unwavering faith. She stood as a beacon of hope in a time of great turmoil. Barak, though a seasoned soldier, sought and valued the wisdom of a woman. His humility and willingness to listen to Deborah's guidance were instrumental in their victory. Jael, a seemingly ordinary woman, played a pivotal role in securing the victory. Her bravery and quick thinking turned the tide of the battle, proving that heroism can come from the most unexpected places. Their story reminds us that true leadership is not defined by titles or positions, but by a willingness to follow God's leading, no matter how unconventional it may seem. It challenges us to look beyond societal norms and expectations. The lessons from this distant battlefield are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. They encourage us to embrace our unique strengths and to trust in a higher power, knowing that we all have a role to play in the greater narrative of life. In our modern world, we can draw inspiration from Deborah, Barak, and Jael. Their legacy teaches us that faith, courage, and unity can overcome any obstacle. It is a call to action for each of us to rise to the challenges we face, with the assurance that we are never alone in our journey. As we reflect on these ancient stories, let us remember that the principles of faith, leadership, and courage are timeless. They continue to guide us, inspire us, and remind us that we are all part of a larger story, one that is still being written today. Section 11. Our Song of Triumph. Today, on the battlefields of our lives, we face enemies just as real as those faced by Deborah and Barak. These enemies may not wield swords or ride chariots, but they are formidable nonetheless. They come in the form of personal struggles, societal pressures, and the relentless march of time. Each day we are called to stand firm against these adversaries, to hold our ground and fight for what is right and just. We wrestle with fear, doubt, insecurity, injustice, and a host of other challenges that threaten to overwhelm us. These internal battles can be just as daunting as any physical confrontation. Fear can paralyze us, doubt can erode our confidence, and insecurity can make us question our worth. Injustice, whether personal or systemic, can make us feel powerless and voiceless. Yet, in the midst of these struggles, we are reminded of the strength that lies within us. But the Song of Deborah reminds us that we are not alone. This ancient hymn, sung by a prophetess and judge, echoes through the ages, offering hope and encouragement. It tells us that we are part of a larger story, one that is guided by a divine hand. We are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses, both past and present, who have faced similar trials and emerged victorious. We serve a God who fights for us, who empowers us with his strength, and who uses even the most unexpected circumstances to bring about his perfect will. This God is not distant or indifferent. He is actively involved in our lives, working behind the scenes to orchestrate events for our good. He takes our weaknesses and turns them into strengths, our failures and turns them into opportunities for growth. Let us, like Deborah, be people of unwavering faith, courageous leadership, and unwavering obedience. Deborah's story is one of boldness and conviction. She did not shy away from her calling, nor did she let fear dictate her actions. Instead, she stepped forward with confidence, trusting in the God who had called her. We too are called to lead with courage, to stand firm in our convictions, and to act with integrity. Let our lives become a symphony of praise to the God who still parts waters, silences storms, and gives victory to the faithful. Every action, every decision, every word we speak can be an act of worship. When we live in alignment with God's will, our lives become a testament to His power and grace. We become living songs of praise, echoing the melody of Deborah's ancient hymn. Let us sing our own song of Deborah, a testament to the God who makes the impossible possible. In our victories and in our struggles, let us lift our voices in praise. Let our lives be a testament to the God who is with us in every battle, who strengthens us in every trial, and who leads us to triumph. Together, let us sing a new song, a song of hope, faith, and victory.
Have you ever heard of the time of the Judges? It was a long time ago in the land of Israel. God's people, the Israelites, had just arrived in the Promised Land. This land was a gift from God, a place overflowing with milk and honey, but there was a problem. The Israelites kept forgetting about God and doing things their own way. When they disobeyed God, bad things happened. Other nations would come and attack them. The Israelites would cry out to God for help. God, in His endless mercy, would raise up special leaders called judges. These judges were brave and strong. They rescued the Israelites and brought peace back to the land. But this peace never lasted. The Israelites would forget God again, and the cycle would repeat. One of the most difficult times during the period of Judges was when the Midianites came knocking. They were relentless and showed no mercy. They were fierce warriors who swept into the land like a plague of locusts, consuming everything in their path. Imagine a swarm of locusts, devouring everything in their path, leaving nothing but bare fields. The devastation was unimaginable. That's what the Midianites did to the Israelites' crops and livestock. They left nothing behind, taking everything of value. Year after year, the Midianites returned. Their raids were relentless, and the Israelites lived in constant fear. They plundered the villages, stole their food, and drove the Israelites into hiding. The Israelites had no peace. They were like bullies in a schoolyard, taking what they wanted and leaving the Israelites trembling in fear. The Israelites were desperate and felt utterly helpless. They hid in caves and mountain strongholds, afraid to even come out and farm their land. Their lives were filled with dread and uncertainty. Can you imagine their fear? Every day was a struggle for survival. Their once abundant land was barren. Their storehouses were empty. Their spirits were crushed. The land that once flowed with milk and honey was now desolate. They cried out to God, begging for a deliverer, someone to save them from this terrible oppression. Their prayers were filled with hope and desperation, longing for a savior to bring them peace and restore their land. Our story takes us to a young man named Gideon. Now, Gideon wasn't a prince or a mighty warrior. He was a farmer, the son of Joash from the tribe of Manasseh. We find Gideon hiding from the Midianites, not in a cave or mountain stronghold, but in a most unusual place, a wine press. Gideon was threshing wheat, not in the open fields as usual, but in secret, hidden inside the wine press. He was trying to protect his meager harvest from the greedy eyes of the Midianites. But Gideon wasn't just hiding from the Midianites, he was also hiding from something else. God's call. God knew that Gideon was the right person to deliver Israel from the Midianites. But Gideon, he couldn't see himself as a hero. As Gideon threshed his wheat, feeling small and insignificant, a most unexpected visitor arrived. An angel of the Lord appeared to him. Can you imagine? An angel, a messenger from God, appearing before Gideon. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior," the angel said. Now, Gideon must have thought the angel had the wrong address. Mighty warrior. Gideon was anything but. He was hiding from the Midianites, for goodness sake. "But, sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about?" Gideon was full of questions, full of doubt. He was focused on the problem, not on the problem solver. But God was not put off by Gideon's doubts. God, in his infinite patience, listened to Gideon's doubts and fears. Gideon, a man chosen by God, was filled with uncertainty and needed divine reassurance. He knew that Gideon needed reassurance, a sign to confirm that he was truly called by God. Gideon's heart was heavy with the responsibility placed upon him, and he sought a clear sign from the Almighty. So God gave Gideon a rather unusual request: the fleece test. This test would serve as a divine confirmation of God's promise to save Israel through Gideon. Gideon asked God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor." This was a bold request, but Gideon needed to be sure. "If there is dew only on the fleece and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you said." This would be a clear sign of divine intervention. And what do you know? God honored Gideon's request. The next morning, Gideon found the fleece soaked with dew. The next morning, the fleece was wet with dew, so much so that he could wring out a bowlful of water from it. This miraculous sign was undeniable, but the ground around it was completely dry. This was exactly what Gideon had asked for, a clear and unmistakable sign from God. But Gideon, still battling his doubts, asked for another sign. His human nature craved further confirmation. This time, he wanted the fleece to be dry and the ground around it to be wet with dew. This second test would leave no room for doubt. Again, God, in his incredible patience and love, granted Gideon's request. The next morning, the fleece was dry, and the ground around it was wet with dew, confirming God's promise once more. Now, you might think that with all this reassurance, Gideon would be ready to charge into battle, right? Well, not so fast. Despite the divine signs and encouragement, Gideon's heart was still heavy with doubt and uncertainty. Gideon still had his doubts. He was a man of faith, but the enormity of the task ahead weighed heavily on him. He sought further assurance from God, praying earnestly for guidance and strength. But God, in his wisdom, had a plan to not only deliver the Israelites, but to also build Gideon's faith and demonstrate his power to all. This plan was not just about winning a battle. It was about transforming Gideon into a leader who trusted in divine power over human strength. God instructed Gideon to gather an army. This was the first step in a divine strategy that would unfold in unexpected ways. Men from the surrounding tribes of Israel responded to Gideon's call, eager to be free from Midianite oppression. They came with hope in their hearts and a desire to reclaim their freedom. Soon, Gideon found himself at the head of a force of 32,000 men. It was a formidable sight, a sea of warriors ready for battle. But God had other plans. He saw beyond the numbers and knew that true victory would come from faith, not sheer force. He told Gideon, "You have too many men." This must have been a shocking revelation for Gideon, who was already anxious about the upcoming battle. God knew that if they won with such a large army, the Israelites would become proud and boast, "My own strength has saved me." They needed to understand that their deliverance would come from divine intervention, not their own might. So God instructed Gideon to whittle down the army. This was a test of faith for Gideon and his men, a challenge to trust in God's plan over their own understanding. First, he sent home all those who were afraid. This significant reduction in numbers was just the beginning of God's plan to show that victory comes through faith and obedience. Now, despite the dwindling numbers, something was changing in Gideon. With each test, with each sign, with each instruction from God, Gideon's faith grew stronger. He was beginning to understand that this wasn't his battle to fight, but God's. And if God was on his side, what did he have to fear? God gave Gideon a plan, the most unusual plan. He divided the 300 men into 3 companies, each man armed with nothing more than a trumpet, a clay jar, and a torch hidden inside. Can you imagine that? Going to war with trumpets, jars, and torches. No swords, no spears, no chariots. But Gideon, now emboldened by his growing faith, obeyed. He was ready to face the Midianites, not with his own strength, but with the strength of the Lord. Under the cover of darkness, Gideon and his 300 men crept towards the Midianite camp. The Midianites, unaware of the approaching threat, were camped in the valley below, their vast numbers spread out like a sea of tents. They were confident, arrogant, and completely unprepared for what was about to hit them. Gideon, following God's instructions, positioned his men around the Midianite camp. He could hear the sounds of the Midianite soldiers, their voices a jumble of foreign tongues, their movements a rustle in the night. Taking a deep breath, Gideon looked at his men, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the moon. It was time. "Do everything you see me do," Gideon whispered to his men. Then, raising his trumpet to his lips, he blew a mighty blast. The sound echoed through the valley, shattering the stillness of the night. The other 299 trumpets followed suit, creating a cacophony of sound that reverberated off the hillsides. Simultaneously, they smashed their clay jars, revealing the blazing torches within. "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon," they shouted, their voices a chorus of defiance against the darkness. The effect was instantaneous and utterly chaotic. The Midianites, startled awake by the sudden noise and light, panicked. They stumbled out of their tents, blinded by the torches, deafened by the trumpets, their minds confused and disoriented. They turned on each other, their swords finding their own comrades in the darkness. Gideon's story is a testament to God's power and faithfulness, but it's also a story about overcoming fear and finding courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Gideon teaches us that it's okay to be afraid. He was terrified. But God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Gideon's transformation from a fearful young man hiding in a winepress to a courageous leader who defeated a vast army is an inspiration to us all. He teaches us that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to step forward in faith even when we're afraid. Just like Gideon, we may face giants in our lives: fear, doubt, insecurity, challenges that seem insurmountable. But Gideon's story reminds us that we are not alone. God is with us, just as He was with Gideon. When we feel inadequate or afraid, we can remember Gideon's fleece, a tangible reminder of God's faithfulness. Gideon's story is more than just an ancient tale. It's a timeless message of hope and encouragement. Let's be like Gideon, willing to step out in faith even when we're afraid, trusting that God will fight for us and bring us victory.
The Israelites, God's chosen people, found themselves in dire straits. For 7 long years, they suffered under the brutal oppression of the Midianites. These nomadic raiders swept through their land like a swarm of locusts, devouring their crops and livestock. The Israelites lived in constant fear, hiding in caves and mountain strongholds. Their cries for deliverance reached the heavens. In the midst of this despair, God heard their pleas. He chose a young man named Gideon from the tribe of Manasseh to be their deliverer. Gideon was an unlikely hero, coming from a humble family and wrestling with doubts. God's messenger appeared to Gideon, proclaiming him a mighty warrior. Despite his initial hesitation, Gideon began to respond to God's call. He built an altar to the Lord, a symbol of his growing faith and commitment. Gideon was stepping into his role as a leader, ready to face the daunting challenge ahead. Gideon, now emboldened by God's promise, issued a call to arms. He sent messengers throughout the land, summoning the Israelites to join him in the fight against the Midianites. The response was overwhelming. Men from different tribes, weary of oppression and longing for freedom, flocked to Gideon's banner. The Israelite army assembled, a force of over 32,000 strong. However, God had a different plan. He knew that if the Israelites won with such a large army, they would boast of their own strength. God wanted to demonstrate his power unequivocally. He instructed Gideon to reduce the size of his army. This command must have seemed perplexing to Gideon. Yet, Gideon trusted in God's wisdom, even when it seemed counterintuitive. The process of reducing the army would be a test of faith for all the assembled Israelites. God's instructions for reducing the army were specific. First, he told Gideon to send home anyone who was afraid. 22,000 men overcome by fear chose to leave. This left Gideon with only 10,000 men. However, God told Gideon that the army was still too large. He wanted to demonstrate that victory would come not through human might, but through divine intervention. God then instructed Gideon to bring the remaining men to the water. There, he would provide another test. This next stage of selection would be even more surprising. The remaining soldiers, unaware of the divine plan unfolding, marched towards the water, their fate hanging in the balance. Gideon led the remaining 10,000 men down to the water's edge. God instructed Gideon to observe how the men drank. Those who lapped the water like a dog, keeping their eyes on their surroundings, were to be kept. Those who knelt down to drink putting their guard down, were to be sent home. Out of the 10,000 men, only 300 lapped the water like a dog. The rest, the vast majority, knelt down to drink. Gideon must have been astonished at the small number remaining. 300 men against the vast Midianite army seemed like an impossible scenario. Yet Gideon trusted in God's plan. These 300 men, the chosen few, were now ready to face the challenge ahead. Their faith tested and their resolve strengthened. Gideon now stood with his 300 men, a small band of warriors against a seemingly insurmountable foe. They represented the heart of Israel, those who were fully committed to the fight. Their small number was a testament to God's plan to achieve victory through divine intervention. These 300 warriors were not necessarily the strongest or most experienced soldiers. They were ordinary men, chosen for their unwavering faith and obedience. Gideon addressed his small army, reminding them of God's promise. He shared his own faith and determination, inspiring them to face the challenge ahead. The 300 men prepared for battle. They were armed not with conventional weapons, but with trumpets, empty jars, and torches. This unconventional weaponry seemed absurd in the face of a powerful enemy. Yet it was part of God's plan, a strategy designed to create confusion and panic among the Midianites. As Gideon and his men prepared for their daring night raid, Gideon sought further reassurance from God. Under the cover of darkness, Gideon crept down to the edge of the Midianite camp with his servant Purah. There they overheard a conversation between two Midianite soldiers. One soldier recounted a dream he had just had, a dream that spoke of Gideon's impending victory. In the dream, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the Midianite camp, striking a tent and causing it to collapse. The other soldier interpreted the dream as a sign of Gideon's imminent triumph. This overheard conversation was the confirmation Gideon needed. It was a divine message, delivered through the enemy's own words. Gideon's heart must have soared with renewed faith and confidence. He returned to his men, his spirit bolstered by the divine confirmation. He shared the dream and its interpretation with his warriors. They were ready to face the enemy, empowered by divine assurance. Gideon's battle plan was unconventional. Instead of traditional weapons, his 300 men were armed with trumpets, empty jars, and torches hidden within the jars. Gideon divided his 300 men into 3 companies, positioning them around the enemy camp under the cover of darkness. At Gideon's signal, the 3 companies simultaneously broke their jars, revealing the blazing torches within. They blew their trumpets, creating a cacophony of sound that reverberated through the night. They shouted, "For the Lord and for Gideon!" The Midianites, awakened from their sleep to this unexpected chaos, were plunged into fear and disarray. The unconventional weaponry, combined with the precise timing and execution of the plan, proved to be remarkably effective. The Midianites, in their panic, began to attack each other. The carefully orchestrated plan of Gideon, guided by divine wisdom, had turned the Midianites' vast numbers against themselves. The sudden illumination, the blaring trumpets, and the war cries of Gideon's men had a devastating effect on the Midianite camp. The darkness, which had once provided them with a sense of security, now became a source of terror. They could not see clearly what was happening, and their imagination magnified the threat. The Midianites, in their panic, began to attack each other. In the darkness and chaos, they mistook their own comrades for the enemy. The noise and confusion escalated, spreading like wildfire throughout the camp. The Midianites, overwhelmed by fear and disorientation, began to flee in all directions. Their once formidable army, now a disorganized mob, was routed by a force a fraction of their size. Gideon's small band of 300 warriors had achieved a miraculous victory. Their victory was a testament to the power of faith, obedience, and divine intervention. Gideon's story is a powerful testament to the importance of faith and courage in the face of adversity. He started as a doubter, hiding from his enemies, but he transformed into a courageous leader who trusted in God's guidance. His journey from insecurity to unwavering faith is an inspiration to us all. The victory over the Midianites was not a result of military prowess or superior numbers. It was a divine victory orchestrated by God through Gideon's obedience and the faith of his small band of warriors. This story reminds us that true strength comes not from human effort alone, but from reliance on God's power and wisdom. Gideon's story also highlights the importance of humility. God intentionally reduced the size of the Israelite army to prevent them from boasting about their own strength. Gideon's legacy continues to inspire us today. His story teaches us to face our fears with courage, to trust in God's guidance, and to give him the glory for every victory. Gideon's story is not just an ancient tale, it holds profound relevance for us today. We all face challenges and obstacles that seem insurmountable. We may feel inadequate like Gideon, doubting our ability to overcome the difficulties we encounter. Yet Gideon's experience teaches us that with faith and trust in a higher power, we can conquer even the most daunting challenges. Like Gideon, we may be tempted to rely on our own strength and resources. However, Gideon's story reminds us that true victory comes through reliance on God. When we surrender our fears and anxieties to him, he can empower us to overcome obstacles that seem impossible on our own. Gideon's unwavering commitment to God's plan inspires us to stand firm in our faith. It encourages us to be true to our convictions, even in the face of opposition. When we face seemingly impossible situations, we can draw strength from Gideon's example and trust that with faith, courage, and divine guidance, we too can achieve victory.
The rise of Gideon, a reluctant hero. Gideon was an unlikely hero. He came from the smallest clan of Manasseh. He threshed wheat in hiding, fearful of the Midianites. Yet, God chose him. God saw something special in Gideon's humility.
A mighty man of valor? How can this be? I'm weak and inadequate. How can I lead Israel?
God reassured him. He promised to be with Gideon. He would empower him to defeat the Midianites. Gideon, though still hesitant, began to believe. He gathered an army. He reduced his forces from thousands to a mere 300. This was at God's command. He wanted to show that victory came from him, not from human strength.
Armed with trumpets, torches, and empty jars, we prepared for battle. Our hearts pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation.
The Midianites were a formidable enemy. They outnumbered the Israelites. They had oppressed them for years. Gideon's strategy was unconventional, relying on surprise and divine intervention. The battle was swift and decisive. Gideon's men blew their trumpets, they smashed their jars, they shouted, "For the Lord and for Gideon!" The Midianites panicked. They turned on each other in the confusion. The Israelites, empowered by God, routed their enemies. The Midianite army was shattered.
Why didn't you call us to join the battle earlier, Gideon? We deserve a share of the glory.
My brothers, your strength and bravery are undeniable. Your later arrival allowed you to capture the Midianite princes Oreb and Zeb.
Gideon's diplomatic response calmed the Ephraimites. Their anger subsided. They felt honored by his words. This incident revealed Gideon's leadership skills. He was not just a warrior, he was also a peacemaker. He knew how to unite the tribes of Israel. Despite the victory, the war was not over. Two Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, had escaped. Gideon was determined to capture them. He pursued them relentlessly. He was driven by a desire for justice. He wanted to ensure the safety of Israel. He crossed the Jordan River. He continued the chase into the wilderness. Gideon and his men were exhausted and hungry. They came to the town of Sukkoth.
Please, we need food and supplies. Help us capture Zebah and Zalmunna.
Why should we help you? We doubt your ability to capture them.
Next, Gideon reached Peniel. He made the same request. The people of Peniel also refused. They echoed the scorn of Sukkoth.
When I return in victory, I will punish both towns.
Gideon's determination did not waver. He continued his pursuit. He was fueled by anger and a sense of righteous indignation. He would not rest until justice was served. He would not allow the Midianite kings to escape. His pursuit was a testament to his unwavering resolve. He finally caught up with Zebah and Zalmunna. Gideon captured Zebah and Zalmunna near the Jordan River. He had fulfilled his vow. He had avenged the deaths of his brothers, whom the Midianite kings had killed. He returned to Sukkoth and Peniel. He did not forget their refusal to help him. He intended to make good on his promise of punishment.
Bring the elders of Sukkoth. I will punish them as I promised.
He captured the elders of Sukkoth. He took thorns and briars from the wilderness. He tore their flesh as he had promised. He meted out a harsh punishment. It was a stark reminder of the consequences of disloyalty and lack of compassion. The people of Sukkoth learned a painful lesson.
Now to Peniel. Demolish their tower and kill all the men in the city.
Gideon demolished the tower of Peniel. He killed all the men in the city. His actions were severe. They reflected the anger and frustration he had felt during his pursuit. The destruction of Peniel served as a warning to other Israelite towns. Gideon's retribution was swift and brutal. He demonstrated that disloyalty and disrespect would not be tolerated. He established his authority. He ensured that his commands would be obeyed in the future. Gideon brought Zebah and Zalmunna back to his hometown. He confronted them with the deaths of his brothers, demanding justice.
You have taken the lives of my brothers. Now you must acknowledge your crime and pay for your cruelty.
The Midianite kings were defiant. Zebah and Zalmunna boasted about their royal lineage and taunted Gideon.
Do you think you, a mere farmer, can judge us? We are kings by birthright.
They dared him to kill them himself, believing their royal status placed them above him. They underestimated Gideon's resolve and misjudged his sense of justice.
Jether, come here. Execute these men.
Gideon's youngest son, Jether, was present. He was hesitant, young, and inexperienced.
I can't do it, father.
Zebah and Zalmunna mocked him, challenging his courage.
Look at the boy. He doesn't have the guts to kill us.
Gideon, seeing his son's hesitation, stepped forward. He personally executed Zebah and Zalmunna, avenging his brothers' deaths. He fulfilled his promise of retribution, demonstrating his courage and strength. He solidified his position as a leader of Israel. Following the victory, the Israelites offered Gideon kingship. They wanted him to rule over them, recognizing his leadership and strength.
I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord is your king.
Instead of accepting the throne, Gideon requested a different reward.
Give me the gold earrings you took as spoils of war.
The Israelites readily complied, piling up a vast quantity of gold. Gideon collected the gold and fashioned it into an ephod, a priestly garment. He placed it in his hometown, Ophrah. It became an object of veneration, and the Israelites began to worship it, turning away from God and falling into idolatry.
This ephod will remind us of the Lord's victory.
But Gideon's seemingly humble request had unintended consequences. The ephod became a snare for him and for Israel, leading them astray. The ephod became a popular shrine. People from all over Israel came to Ophrah to worship it. They offered sacrifices and sought blessings, forgetting the true God who had delivered them from the Midianites. They were seduced by the allure of the golden image.
This was never my intention. I wanted to honor God, not create an idol.
However, his actions had disastrous consequences. The Israelites' faith became corrupted as they focused on the physical object rather than the spiritual reality. The ephod became a symbol of their spiritual decline, representing their departure from the true worship of God. It marked a turning point in their history, paving the way for future generations to fall into idolatry. The story of the ephod is a cautionary tale. It demonstrates the dangers of misplaced faith and highlights the importance of remaining true to God's commands. Despite the tragedy of the ephod, Gideon's leadership brought a period of peace to Israel. The Midianites were defeated, the land was secure, the people enjoyed prosperity. Gideon lived to a ripe old age. He witnessed the fruits of his victories. He had many wives and 70 sons. He was a respected figure. He was remembered for his courage and leadership. He was hailed as a deliverer of Israel. His name became synonymous with strength and victory. He left a lasting legacy. During his lifetime, the land enjoyed tranquility. The people were free from oppression. They could farm their fields and raise their families without fear. Gideon's leadership had brought stability and security to the nation. His legacy was one of peace and prosperity.
Gideon's final years were a stark contrast to the turmoil of his early life. He had risen from obscurity to become a national hero.
After Gideon's death, the Israelites quickly forgot the lessons they had learned. They abandoned the worship of the true God. They returned to their old ways of idolatry. They worshipped Baal and other false gods. They fell back into the cycle of sin and rebellion. The peace that Gideon had established did not last. The Israelites' spiritual decline led to political and social unrest. They became vulnerable to their enemies. They lost the unity and strength that Gideon had forged. They were once again in danger of being conquered. The story of Israel's relapse after Gideon's death is a sad commentary on human nature. It demonstrates the fragility of faith. It highlights the constant temptation to turn away from God. It shows how easily people can forget the blessings they have received. The cycle of sin and redemption is a recurring theme in the Bible. Gideon was a complex character. He was a man of great faith and courage, yet he also struggled with doubt and insecurity. He was a humble servant of God, yet he also displayed moments of pride and anger. He was a brilliant military strategist, yet he also made mistakes that had lasting consequences. His story is a reminder that even the greatest heroes are flawed human beings. It teaches us that God can use imperfect people to accomplish His purposes. It encourages us to embrace our own imperfections and to trust in God's grace. It shows us that true strength comes from humility and dependence on God. Gideon's life was a tapestry of triumphs and failures. He experienced both the highs of victory and the lows of despair. He learned valuable lessons from both his successes and his mistakes. He grew in faith and wisdom throughout his life. His story is an inspiration to all who seek to follow God.
Gideon's character is a reflection of the human condition.
The story of Gideon offers valuable lessons for us today. It teaches us the importance of humility, courage, and faith. Gideon's initial reluctance to accept God's call reminds us that true strength comes from recognizing our own weakness and relying on God's power. His courage in facing the Midianites with a small band of men inspires us to be bold in our faith, even when we face overwhelming odds. His willingness to obey God's commands, even when they seemed unconventional, challenges us to trust in God's wisdom and guidance. Gideon's story also warns us against the dangers of pride and idolatry. The incident with the Ephraimites and the creation of the ephod demonstrate the devastating consequences of misplaced priorities and misplaced faith. They remind us to keep our focus on God and to avoid the temptations of the world. The epic tale of Gideon is a timeless story of faith, courage, and redemption. It is a story that can inspire us to live lives of humility, courage, and faithfulness to God.
Abimelech, a name meaning "my father is king," ironically foreshadowed his tumultuous reign. His life was a paradox, a blend of ambition and tragedy, driven by a desire to rise above his circumstances. He was the son of Gideon, also known as Jerubbaal, a renowned judge of Israel. Gideon was a man of great valor and faith who led Israel to victory against the Midianites. However, Abimelech was not born of Gideon's wives, but of a concubine from Shechem. This distinction marked him as different, an outsider within his own family. This illegitimate status would fuel his ambition and shape his destiny. He grew up with a chip on his shoulder, determined to prove his worth. His very existence was a complication, a seed of potential conflict sown in the fertile ground of familial power dynamics. The tension within his family was palpable, a constant undercurrent of rivalry and suspicion. Would he be content with a lesser role, or would he crave the power his father held? The question haunted him, driving him to seek more than what was offered. Born into the shadow of his father's legacy, Abimelech yearned for recognition and authority. He wanted to step out of that shadow and cast one of his own. He saw himself as a rightful heir, despite his illegitimate birth. In his mind, his lineage did not diminish his claim to power. His ambition burned bright, fueled by a desire to surpass his father's achievements. He was relentless, always pushing forward, never satisfied with mediocrity. He viewed his half-brothers as obstacles to his ultimate goal, the throne of Israel. To him, they were merely stepping stones on his path to greatness. This ambition would prove to be a dangerous fire, consuming everything in its path. It was a fire that could not be quenched, one that demanded sacrifice. It would set him on a course of violence and betrayal. His journey was marked by treachery, a trail of broken trust and shattered alliances. The socio-political landscape of ancient Israel was complex, with tribal alliances and rivalries constantly shifting. It was a land of opportunity for those who knew how to navigate its treacherous waters. Abimelech understood these dynamics and sought to exploit them for his own gain. He was a master of manipulation, adept at turning situations to his advantage. He was a shrewd manipulator, skilled at playing on the fears and desires of others. His words were his weapons, cutting through the defenses of those around him. He saw an opportunity in Shechem, his mother's hometown, to gain the support he needed to seize power. The city was a strategic stronghold, a place where he could build his base of power. This city, with its own complex relationship with the surrounding tribes, would become the staging ground for his ascent. It was a place where he could rally support and launch his bid for kingship. His Canaanite heritage through his mother also played a significant role in his character. It gave him a unique perspective, a blend of cultures that influenced his approach to leadership. Shechem, a Canaanite city, offered a different perspective on leadership than the Israelite tradition. It was a place where power was more overtly displayed and ruthlessly pursued. It was a culture that perhaps emphasized power and dominance more overtly. This environment shaped Abimelech, making him more ruthless and determined. This influence, combined with his ambition, shaped his ruthless approach to power. He was willing to do whatever it took to achieve his goals. He was willing to cross any line to achieve his goals, disregarding the moral compass of his father's faith. His ambition knew no bounds, and he was prepared to pay any price. His path to kingship was paved with blood and deceit. It was a journey marked by betrayal, a testament to the lengths he would go to claim the throne. Abimelech journeyed to Shechem, his mother's ancestral home, a place steeped in history and familial ties. He sought the support of his mother's clan, the family of his mother's father, knowing that their backing was crucial for his ambitions. He presented himself as a potential leader, highlighting his connection to Gideon, the mighty warrior, and emphasizing his Shechemite lineage, which he believed gave him a rightful claim. He played on their local pride, suggesting that they deserved a ruler from their own city rather than being subject to Gideon's sons from Ophrah, who were seen as outsiders. His words were carefully chosen, designed to ignite a spark of rebellion and stir the hearts of the Shechemites. He cleverly insinuated that Gideon's other sons, his 70 half-brothers, would rule over Shechem with an iron fist, bringing tyranny and oppression. He painted a grim picture of oppression and servitude, playing upon the Shechemites' fear of being subjugated and losing their autonomy. He argued that a single ruler, one of their own, would be more beneficial than being ruled by a multitude of brothers, each with their own agenda. His arguments were laced with half-truths and outright lies, expertly crafted to manipulate his audience and bend them to his will. The seeds of doubt and resentment began to take root, spreading like wildfire among the people. The clan leaders, swayed by Abimelech's rhetoric and promises of prosperity, agreed to support his bid for power, seeing in him a chance for greater influence. They provided him with 70 pieces of silver from the temple of Baal-berith, their local deity, a significant sum that symbolized their commitment. This act was not only a financial investment in Abimelech's ambition, but also a symbolic betrayal of Gideon's legacy and the God of Israel, a turning point in their history. The silver, intended for sacred purposes, was now being used to fund a bloody coup, a stark contrast to its original holy intent. With the silver in hand, Abimelech hired a band of ruthless mercenaries, vain and worthless persons, as described in the biblical account, men who had no loyalty but to their pay. These men were loyal only to their purse strings, making them perfect tools for Abimelech's violent scheme, ready to do his bidding without question. They were the embodiment of his ambition, devoid of moral scruples and eager to carry out his bloody commands, driven by greed and the promise of reward. The stage was now set for a horrific act of fratricide, a dark chapter in the history of Shechem, where brother would turn against brother in a quest for power. Abimelech had successfully manipulated the citizens of Shechem, weaving a web of deceit and ambition. He preyed on their insecurities and fueled their desire for local autonomy, exploiting their fears and hopes. His promises of prosperity and strong leadership resonated deeply with the Shechemites, who were eager to establish their own dominance in the region, free from external control. He presented himself as the solution to their perceived problems, painting a vivid picture of a brighter future under his rule, a future where Shechem would rise to unprecedented heights. The alliance was forged not on mutual respect but on shared ambition and a thirst for power, a dangerous combination that would soon reveal its true nature. The Shechemites, driven by their own desires for political and economic advancement, readily embraced Abimelech's proposal, seeing in him a means to an end. They saw in him a strong leader who could elevate their city's status, a figure who promised to bring them the glory they so desperately sought. They were blinded by the allure of power and the promise of a more prosperous future. Unable to see the potential consequences of their actions, they failed to see the inherent danger in aligning themselves with such a ruthless and ambitious individual, ignoring the warning signs that were all too clear. The pact they made would ultimately lead to their own destruction, a fate sealed by their own hands. The alliance with Shechem was a pivotal moment in Abimelech's rise, a crucial step in his quest for power. It provided him with the legitimacy and resources he needed to challenge his brothers, giving him the means to pursue his violent ambitions. The financial backing of the Shechemites allowed him to assemble a force capable of carrying out his violent plan, a plan that would bring chaos and bloodshed. The city became his base of operations, a strategic location from which he could launch his campaign of terror, a stronghold that symbolized his newfound power. With the Shechemites as his allies, Abimelech felt invincible, emboldened by their support and the resources at his disposal. The agreement was a dangerous gamble for the city of Shechem, a risk that would soon prove to be their undoing. They were putting their trust in a man who had already demonstrated a willingness to betray his own family, a clear indication of his ruthless nature. They were becoming complicit in his bloody ambition, a decision that would ultimately cost them dearly, as they would soon find out. The alliance, built on a foundation of deceit and manipulation, was destined to crumble, a fragile construct that could not withstand the weight of its own treachery. The seeds of Shechem's destruction were sown in this very pact, a tragic outcome that was inevitable from the moment they chose to align with Abimelech. With the backing of Shechem, Abimelech marched on Ophrah, his father's hometown. He intended to eliminate all potential rivals to his claim to power, his target, his 70 half-brothers. This act of fratricide would be a brutal demonstration of his resolve and a chilling message to anyone who dared oppose him. The massacre would forever stain his hands with the blood of his own kin. He led his band of mercenaries to the stone on which Gideon used to thresh wheat. There, he gathered his brothers, and in a single act of horrific violence, slaughtered them all, save one. Jotham, the youngest son, managed to escape the carnage. The stone, once a symbol of Gideon's agricultural prowess, now became a monument to Abimelech's barbarity. The blood of his brothers soaked into the ground, a grim omen of the violence to come. The massacre at Ophrah was a shocking display of brutality. It sent shockwaves throughout the region, solidifying Abimelech's reputation as a ruthless and ambitious leader. The act was not just about eliminating rivals, it was about establishing fear. It was about sending a clear message that he would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. The sheer scale of the slaughter was a testament to his cold-blooded ambition. The slaughter of his brothers was a turning point. Abimelech had crossed a line from which there was no return. He had traded familial bonds for the pursuit of power. He had embraced violence as his primary tool for control. The massacre at Ophrah marked the beginning of his reign of terror. It was a reign built on blood and fear, a reign destined to be short-lived and ultimately self-destructive.
The Book of Judges paints a vivid picture of ancient Israel, a time marked by both spiritual highs and lows. Following the conquest of Canaan, the Israelites fell into cycles of disobedience, oppression, repentance, and deliverance. God raised up judges to deliver them from their enemies and guide them back to faithfulness. These judges weren't always perfect, but their stories offer valuable lessons. This era highlights the importance of adhering to God's covenant. The period of the judges was a turbulent time of testing and trial. Amidst the chaos, God's faithfulness remained constant. Tola, whose name means worm or crimson, emerged as a leader after the chaotic rule of Abimelech. He was from the tribe of Issachar, a tribe known more for its scholarly pursuits than its military prowess, yet Tola rose to the occasion. demonstrating that leadership can emerge from unexpected places. He judged Israel for 23 years, a testament to his wisdom and ability to maintain stability.
I resided in Shamir, a city in the mountainous region of Ephraim. From this strategic location, I administered justice and provided leadership to the Israelite tribes.
His long tenure suggests a period of relative peace and prosperity, a welcome respite after the turmoil of Abimelech's reign. The scriptures don't recount specific battles or dramatic events during Tolah's time, indicating a period of consolidation and recovery. While the biblical account of Tolah is brief, his leadership was clearly impactful. He provided stability and guidance during a crucial period in Israel's history. His story reminds us that even in times of peace, strong leadership is essential. Following Tolah, Jair the Gileadite assumed the mantle of leadership. He judged Israel for 22 years, continuing the period of relative stability established by his predecessor.
I was a man of considerable wealth and influence, possessing 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys and controlled 30 towns in Gilead. This detail highlights my status and the extent of my authority.
Jair's 30 sons, each riding a donkey, symbolized their privileged position and the reach of their father's influence. Donkeys, while not as prestigious as horses, were valuable assets in that era, used for transportation and as a sign of affluence. The fact that each son had his own donkey underscores the family's prosperity and their prominent standing within the community. The 30 towns under Jair's control, known as Havoth Jair, were located in the region of Gilead, east of the Jordan River. This territory was known for its fertile land and strategic importance. Jair's control over these towns suggests his administrative abilities and his capacity to maintain order and security within his jurisdiction. Following the relatively peaceful times under Tolah and Jair, the Israelites once again fell into the familiar pattern of disobedience. They abandoned the worship of the one true God and turned to the gods of the surrounding nations. This spiritual infidelity led to a decline in their moral compass and a weakening of their national identity.
They forsook the covenant they had made with God and embraced the idolatrous practices of their neighbors. This turning away from God grieved the Lord deeply. He had delivered them from slavery in Egypt and brought them into the promised land, yet they continually chose to follow other gods.
Their idolatry was not simply a matter of religious practice, it represented a rejection of God's love and a betrayal of their relationship with Him. This spiritual unfaithfulness had dire consequences for the nation.
The consequences of their idolatry were swift and severe. The Lord withdrew His protection, leaving them vulnerable to their enemies. The Ammonites, a powerful nation to the east, began to oppress the Israelites, plundering their land and enslaving their people.
For 18 years, the Israelites suffered under the yoke of Ammonite oppression, a direct result of their disobedience. Section 5 of Jephthah, a mighty warrior with a tragic flaw.
Jephthah, a Gileadite warrior, emerges in this time of crisis.
He was a skilled and courageous fighter, known for his military prowess. However, he was also a man with a tragic flaw, a rash vow that would have devastating consequences. Despite his flaws, Jephthah was chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from the Ammonites.
Jephthah's early life was marked by rejection and hardship. He was the son of a prostitute and was driven away by his half-brothers.
He found refuge in the land of Tob, where he gathered a band of followers. Despite his difficult upbringing, Jephthah developed into a formidable warrior, earning a reputation for his strength and leadership.
When the Ammonites threatened Israel, the elders of Gilead sought Jephthah's help. Recognizing his military skills and leadership qualities, they offered him the position of commander.
Jephthah agreed, driven by a desire to deliver his people and perhaps also by a desire for acceptance and recognition. Section 6. Jephthah's vow and its devastating consequences.
Before going into battle against the Ammonites, Jephthah made a rash vow to the Lord.
He promised that if God granted him victory, he would offer as a burnt offering whatever came out of his house to meet him upon his return. This vow, made in a moment of desperation and perhaps arrogance, would have devastating consequences. Jephthah's vow reveals a flawed understanding of God's character. The Lord does not require human sacrifice, a practice expressly forbidden in Israelite law. Jephthah's eagerness to secure victory led him to make a reckless promise without considering the potential ramifications.
Upon his victorious return, Jephthah was met by his only daughter, coming out to greet him with music and dancing. This tragic turn of events plunged Jephthah into despair.
He had made a vow to the Lord, and in his understanding he was bound to fulfill it, even if it meant sacrificing his own daughter.
Following my victory over the Ammonites, I faced internal conflict within Israel. The Ephraimites, a powerful tribe, challenged my leadership and threatened war. They questioned why I had not called upon them for assistance in the battle against the Ammonites.
Jephthah responded by gathering his troops and engaging the Ephraimites in battle. The Gileadites, under Jephthah's command, emerged victorious. They used a shibboleth, a linguistic test, to identify and eliminate fleeing Ephraimites who could not pronounce the word correctly.
My judgeship, while marked by military success, was also marred by internal strife and the tragic consequence of my vow. My story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rash decisions and the importance of considering the potential ramifications of our actions.
Despite his flaws, Jephthah is remembered as a deliverer of Israel. The stories of Tola, Jair, and Jephthah offer valuable lessons about faithfulness and obedience to God. Tola and Jair led during times of relative peace, demonstrating the importance of steady leadership in maintaining stability and prosperity. Jephthah's story, on the other hand, highlights the dangers of straying from God's commands and the tragic consequences of rash decisions. These judges, each in their own way, exemplify the importance of adhering to God's covenant. Tola and Jair, though briefly mentioned, maintained faithfulness during their tenure, ensuring stability and prosperity for Israel. Jephthah, despite his flaws, answered God's call to deliver his people, demonstrating the importance of courage and decisive action. Jephthah's tragic vow serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us to consider carefully the promises we make and to seek wisdom before acting impulsively. His story underscores the importance of understanding God's character and aligning our actions with his will. The Book of Judges reveals a recurring cycle of sin, oppression, repentance, and redemption. The Israelites repeatedly turned away from God, leading to periods of oppression by their enemies. However, in their distress, they would cry out to God for deliverance. God, in his mercy, would raise up judges to deliver them from their oppressors and restore them to a right relationship with him. This cycle highlights the enduring nature of God's love and his willingness to forgive even repeated acts of disobedience. The stories of Tola, Jair, and Jephthah fit within this larger narrative of sin and redemption. While Tola and Jair led during times of relative peace, their leadership helped prevent the Israelites from falling into the cycle of disobedience. Jephthah, though flawed, played a crucial role in delivering Israel from oppression, facilitating their return to God. The stories of these judges hold relevance for contemporary audiences. They remind us of the importance of standing firm in our faith, even amidst challenges and temptations. Just as the Israelites faced external enemies and internal struggles, we too face pressures that can lead us astray. The judges' examples encourage us to cultivate strong moral compasses, grounded in faith and obedience to God's principles. Their stories challenge us to examine our own lives and identify areas where we may have compromised our values or strayed from our beliefs. Just as the Israelites experienced the consequences of their choices, we too will reap what we sow. Our decisions have far-reaching implications not only for ourselves, but also for those around us. The judges' stories underscore the importance of making wise choices aligned with our faith.
Jephthah's story begins shrouded in a shadow of illegitimacy. He was the son of Gilead, a respected man, but his mother was a prostitute, a fact that would forever haunt his life.
I grew up with the stigma of my mother's profession clinging to me like a second skin. My half-brothers, born of Gilead's wife, looked down upon me with disdain.
He longed for acceptance, for a place among his family and peers. He yearned for his father's approval, but it seemed forever out of reach.
My childhood was marked by loneliness and a sense of not belonging. The pain of rejection fueled a burning desire within me to prove my worth.
He possessed a natural charisma and a warrior spirit, qualities that would later shape his destiny. Even in his youth, he displayed a talent for leadership, attracting a band of loyal followers. Driven by jealousy, his half-brothers conspired to expel him from their land. Gilead, swayed by his wife and sons, banished Jephthah, forcing him into exile.
The pain of rejection by my own family cut deep, leaving a wound that would never fully heal. I sought refuge in the land of Tob, a desolate region known for its lawlessness and violence.
There, he gathered around him a band of outcasts and adventurers, men who, like him, had been rejected by society. He became their leader, their protector, and their champion.
I learned to strategize, to command, and to inspire loyalty in my followers. Despite the hardships, I never forgot the injustice I had suffered.
He yearned for the day he could return to his homeland, not as an outcast, but as a leader, a man worthy of respect. He bided his time, waiting for the opportunity to prove his worth to those who had rejected him. Years passed, and the land of Gilead faced a new threat. The Ammonites, a powerful and aggressive nation, were encroaching upon their territory. The elders of Gilead, desperate for a strong leader, remembered Jephthah, the outcast warrior.
Jephthah, we recount the plight of Gilead, the threat of the Ammonites, and our desperate need for a leader. We acknowledge our past wrongs, admitting our error in banishing you.
Jephthah listened intently, his heart torn between the bitterness of his past and the call to duty.
I see an opportunity to reclaim my birthright, to prove my worth to those who cast me aside. Leading Gilead to victory against the Ammonites would not only secure my position as a leader, but also offer me a chance for redemption.
He agreed to return, but not without conditions. Jephthah, hardened by his experiences in Tob, returned to Gilead not as a supplicant, but as a seasoned warrior and leader. He negotiated with the elders, demanding recognition as their leader, not just for the duration of the war, but permanently.
We agree to your terms, Jephthah. We recognize your strength, your military prowess, and the unwavering loyalty you command from your men.
Jephthah's return to Gilead was a moment of triumph, a vindication of his worth. He had overcome the stigma of his birth and the bitterness of his exile.
I immediately began to organize the defense of Gilead, rallying the people and preparing for war. I inspired them with my courage and my unwavering confidence.
He transformed them from a demoralized populace into a fighting force ready to defend their homeland. He embraced his new role with determination, ready to face the challenges ahead. The Ammonites, emboldened by their recent conquests, posed a formidable threat to Gilead.
A direct confrontation with the Ammonite forces would be costly. We must first attempt to resolve this conflict through diplomacy.
Jephthah, ever the strategist, knew the risks of a direct battle. He sent messengers to the Ammonite king to negotiate a peaceful settlement, citing historical claims and ancient treaties.
My lord, the Ammonite king scoffed at your claims. He asserts his right to the disputed territory and threatens to crush Gilead if we do not surrender unconditionally.
The Ammonite king, arrogant and dismissive, rejected Jephthah's pleas for peace.
Remember, we fight for our families, our homes, and our very existence.
He rallied his troops, reminding them of the stakes involved. As the battle with the Ammonites drew near, Jephthah, driven by a desperate desire for victory, made a rash vow to God.
If you grant me victory over the Ammonites, I will offer as a burnt offering the first thing that comes out of the doors of my house upon my return.
In his zeal to secure God's favor, he failed to consider the potential consequences of his vow.
I place my trust in God's power, but this vow, it places a heavy burden upon myself and my family.
Jephthah's vow revealed a complex interplay of faith, desperation, and a cultural understanding of sacrifice. He felt bound by his words, unaware of the tragic consequences that awaited him.
O Lord, guide and protect us. Let this sacrifice be worth the price of victory.
He prayed for God's guidance and protection, hoping that whatever sacrifice he was required to make would be worth the price of victory. He marched into battle with a heavy heart, torn between his desire for victory and the weight of his vow. He placed the fate of Gilead and his own future in God's hands. The battle against the Ammonites was fierce and bloody. Jephthah, leading his troops with unmatched courage and skill, inspired his men to fight with unwavering determination.
Press on, break their lines. Victory is within our grasp.
After a hard-fought struggle, the Gileadites achieved a decisive victory, routing the Ammonite army and securing their territory. Jephthah returned home, victorious but apprehensive.
I've won the battle, but at what cost?
The joy of victory was tempered by the dread of fulfilling his vow. As he approached his house, his heart sank as he saw his daughter, his only child, rushing out to greet him, dancing and playing a tambourine.
No, my daughter, what have I done?
The sight of his daughter filled him with a mixture of joy and despair.
I have made a vow to the Lord, and I cannot break it. Oh, my daughter.
Father, if you have made a vow to the Lord, you must do to me as you have said. But grant me this, let me go to the mountains and mourn my impending death with my companions for 2 months.
Jephthah's daughter, a young woman of remarkable faith and courage, accepted her fate with stoic resignation.
I do not protest or plead for mercy. Instead, I request 2 months to mourn my impending death in the mountains with my companions.
She spent her final days in the wilderness, lamenting her lost future, the marriage she would never have, the children she would never bear. She grieved not only for herself but also for her father, who would carry the burden of her sacrifice for the rest of his life. Her companions mourned with her, sharing her grief and offering comfort in her final days. After 2 months, she returned to her father, ready to fulfill his vow.
Father, I am ready.
Jephthah, heartbroken but resolute, carried out his vow, offering his daughter as a burnt offering. The sacrifice was a testament to his unwavering commitment to his word, but it was also a tragedy that would forever haunt his life and the history of Israel. Her sacrifice, though tragic, served as a reminder of the profound consequences of vows and the importance of carefully considering one's words. The act of sacrificing his daughter left an indelible scar on Jephthah's soul.
The joy of my victory over the Ammonites is overshadowed by the profound grief I carry. I have secured the safety and prosperity of my people, but I have paid a terrible price for it.
The memory of his daughter's sacrifice cast a long shadow over his leadership. He struggled to reconcile his faith with the tragic outcome of his vow. Jephthah's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rash vows and the importance of considering the potential consequences of one's words.
I continued to lead Gilead for 6 years, but my leadership was marked by the weight of my grief. I never fully recovered from the trauma of sacrificing my daughter.
His story serves as a reminder of the human cost of war and the enduring power of love and loss. Despite the tragic events surrounding his daughter's sacrifice, Jephthah's legacy as a leader remained complex and significant. He had delivered Gilead from the threat of the Ammonites, securing their safety and prosperity. He had united the people and instilled in them a sense of pride and purpose. He was recognized as a courageous warrior, a skilled strategist, and a devoted leader. However, his legacy was also marred by the tragic consequences of his vow. His rash decision to sacrifice his daughter served as a cautionary tale for future generations. Jephthah's story is a testament to the complexities of leadership. It demonstrates that even those who achieve great things can be flawed and make tragic mistakes. The story of Jephthah's vow serves as a powerful reminder of the weight of words and the importance of careful consideration before making promises. Jephthah's rash vow, made in the heat of battle, led to a devastating outcome that forever changed his life. His story underscores the sanctity of vows in ancient Israelite culture. Vows were considered sacred obligations, binding agreements between individuals and God. Jephthah's commitment to fulfilling his vow, even at the cost of his daughter's life, reflects the profound significance of vows in his time. The tragic consequences of Jephthah's vow highlight the importance of prudence and wisdom in making promises. His story serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to consider carefully the potential implications of our words and to avoid making rash commitments that we may later regret. Jephthah's vow reminds us that words have power. They can bring blessings or curses. They can create or destroy.
The Book of Judges paints a vivid picture of ancient Israel, a time characterized by cycles of sin, oppression, repentance, and deliverance. Following Jephthah's victory over the Ammonites, a conflict erupts between the Gileadites and the Ephraimites, revealing the fragility of unity within the Israelite tribes. This chapter offers a sobering reminder of the importance of clear communication and humble leadership. The narrative underscores the devastating consequences of unchecked anger and the enduring impact of words and actions. Tribal identities often overshadowed national unity, leading to misunderstandings and rivalries. The story of Jephthah and the Ephraimites exemplifies this dynamic, demonstrating how quickly simmering tensions can escalate into open conflict. The absence of a strong, unifying leader contributed to the volatile political landscape. the conflict between Jephthah and the Ephraimites serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the need to prioritize common ground over tribal loyalties. The tragic consequences of this conflict serve as a stark reminder of the importance of unity and cooperation. The story of Jephthah and the Ephraimites is not merely an ancient historical account. It holds valuable lessons for contemporary society. The themes of miscommunication, pride, and the devastating consequences of conflict resonate even today. By examining this biblical narrative, we can gain insights into the dynamics of conflict resolution and the importance of cultivating understanding and empathy. Jephthah, a Gileadite outcast, was called to lead against the Ammonites. Desperate, he vowed to sacrifice the first thing from his house if victorious. The Lord granted him victory. Jephthah returned home unaware of the tragedy awaiting him. His daughter, his only child, greeted him. The joy of victory was overshadowed by his vow. Jephthah, torn by love and duty, fulfilled his vow. Following Jephthah's victory over the Ammonites, the Ephraimites, a powerful tribe from the west side of the Jordan River, challenged his leadership. They questioned why he hadn't called upon them to join the battle, accusing him of excluding them from the spoils of war. Their complaint, rooted in pride and a sense of entitlement, ignited a conflict that would further divide the already fractured Israelite tribes. The Ephraimites' challenge reveals the underlying tensions and rivalries that existed between the tribes. Jephthah, still reeling from the emotional toll of sacrificing his daughter, attempted to reason with the Ephraimites. He explained that he had indeed called upon them for assistance, but they had failed to respond. He defended his actions, arguing that he had been forced to rely on his own tribe, the Gileadites, to fight the Ammonites. The Ephraimites, blinded by their pride and anger, refused to listen to Jephthah's explanation. Their unwillingness to engage in dialogue paved the way for a bloody confrontation. This refusal to communicate effectively underscores the importance of open and honest dialogue in resolving conflicts. Jephthah, faced with the Ephraimites' intransigence, mobilized his Gileadite forces. He felt betrayed by their accusations and saw no other option but to defend his actions and his people. The escalating tension between the two tribes set the stage for a bloody civil war. The Gileadites, under Jephthah's command, engaged the Ephraimites in battle. The fighting was fierce, and the Gileadites, fueled by a sense of righteous indignation, gained the upper hand. They pursued the fleeing Ephraimites, determined to punish them for their perceived betrayal. The Gileadites, in their pursuit of the Ephraimites, secured the fords of the Jordan River. This strategic move allowed them to control the escape routes and identify fleeing Ephraimites. As the Ephraimites attempted to cross the Jordan, the Gileadites implemented a clever test to identify them. They asked each person to pronounce the word Shibboleth. The Shibboleth incident is one of the most chilling episodes in the Book of Judges. The Gileadites, using this simple linguistic test, identified and slaughtered fleeing Ephraimites. The word Shibboleth, meaning stream or ear of corn, became a symbol of division and a tool of brutal discrimination. This incident highlights the tragic consequences of turning minor differences into justifications for violence. The Ephraimites' inability to pronounce the sh sound in Shibboleth became their undoing. As they attempted to cross the Jordan River, they were met by Gileadite guards who subjected them to this linguistic test. Those who failed the test were immediately put to death. The Jordan River, once a symbol of hope and deliverance for the Israelites, became a scene of carnage. The waters ran red with the blood of slain Ephraimites, a grim testament to the destructive power of internal strife. The Shibboleth incident resulted in the deaths of 42,000 Ephraimites. The legacy of Shibboleth serves as a chilling reminder of the human capacity for cruelty. The aftermath of the battle between the Gileadites and the Ephraimites left the Israelite nation deeply divided. The brutal massacre at the Jordan River crossings created a chasm between the tribes, further eroding the already fragile unity of Israel. The cycle of violence and retribution continued, leaving a legacy of bitterness and resentment. The Shibboleth incident became a symbol of the deep-seated animosity between the tribes. The word itself became a reminder of the brutal massacre and the linguistic difference that had been used to justify the slaughter. The lack of a strong central leadership, exacerbated the divisions within Israel. The absence of a king or a unifying figure made it difficult to mediate disputes and enforce justice. The cycle of violence continued unabated, leaving the nation vulnerable to external threats. This period of instability highlights the importance of strong leadership in maintaining peace and unity. The lessons from this chapter resonate even today, offering valuable insights into the dynamics of conflict and the importance of building bridges of understanding. Following Jephthah's tumultuous leadership, Ibzan of Bethlehem emerged as a judge in Israel. His reign, though less dramatic than Jephthah's, is notable for its focus on family. Ibzan had many sons and daughters, whom he strategically married into other families, likely to forge alliances and promote peace within the tribes. This emphasis on family suggests a desire to strengthen social bonds and foster unity after the period of conflict. Ibzan's leadership seems to have been characterized by a period of relative peace and stability. Unlike Jephthah, whose reign was marked by war and internal strife, Ibzan's focus on family suggests a desire to consolidate and strengthen the nation from within. His approach to leadership highlights the importance of building strong families as the foundation of a healthy society. By marrying his children into other families, he likely aimed to create a network of relationships that would promote cooperation and prevent future conflicts. Ibzan judged Israel for 7 years, a relatively short period compared to some other judges. His reign, though less dramatic than some others, offers valuable insights into the importance of family and social cohesion in building a strong and stable nation. Following Ibzan, Elon the Zebulunite became a judge in Israel. His reign, spanning 10 years, is described with remarkable brevity in the Book of Judges. The lack of detail suggests a period of relative peace and stability, a welcome respite after the tumultuous events of Jephthah's leadership. Elon's reign, though briefly mentioned, represents a period of tranquility in a turbulent era. The scriptures offer little information about Elon's specific actions or policies. The absence of dramatic events suggests that his leadership was characterized by a focus on maintaining peace and order. This period of stability likely allowed the Israelite tribes to recover and rebuild after the conflicts of the past. Elon's Zebulunite origin is significant. The tribe of Zebulun, located in the northern part of Israel, had not been directly involved in the conflict between Jephthah and the Ephraimites. Elon's leadership may have represented a shift away from the tribal rivalries that had plagued the nation. Abdon, the son of Hillel, a Pirathonite, succeeded Elon as a judge in Israel. Like Ibzan, Abdon is noted for his large family, having 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. This detail, though seemingly trivial, suggests a period of prosperity and influence. The ability to maintain such a large family and provide them with mounts indicates a position of wealth and power. Abdon's lineage, tracing back to Pirathon and Ephraim, is significant. His leadership, following the conflict between Jephthah and the Ephraimites, may have represented a step towards reconciliation between the tribes. His Ephraimite origin could have helped to heal the wounds of the past and promote unity within the nation. Abdon judged Israel for 8 years, a period marked by relative peace and prosperity. His large family and their prominent position suggest a time of stability and growth. Abdon's leadership, though briefly described, represents a period of consolidation and strength for the Israelite nation. Judges 12 offers valuable lessons about the dangers of pride and miscommunication. The conflict between Jephthah and the Ephraimites demonstrates how quickly perceived slights and misunderstandings can escalate into violence. The Shibboleth incident serves as a chilling reminder of the dehumanizing effects of prejudice and the tragic consequences of turning minor differences into justifications for violence. The story of Jephthah's vow highlights the dangers of making rash decisions in moments of desperation. His impulsive promise, made in the heat of battle, led to the tragic sacrifice of his daughter. This incident serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to approach our commitments with wisdom and discernment. The Ephraimites' challenge to Jephthah's leadership reveals the destructive power of pride and entitlement. Their refusal to listen to his explanation and their insistence on their own perceived superiority fueled the conflict. This incident underscores the importance of humility and the willingness to consider different perspectives. The lack of strong central leadership in Judges 12 exacerbated the existing tensions between the tribes. The lessons from Judges 12 resonate today, offering insights into conflict dynamics and the importance of understanding. It challenges us to examine our biases and strive for peaceful solutions. The story of Jephthah and the Ephraimites reminds us of the importance of communication and empathy. By embracing diversity, we can build a more inclusive society. Judges 12 encourages humility and cooperation in disagreements.
The Israelites, God's chosen people, had strayed from righteousness, embracing idolatry and wickedness, turning away from their faith. As a consequence, they found themselves under the oppressive rule of the Philistines for 40 long years. Their towns were plundered, crops destroyed, and people forced into harsh servitude. The weight of oppression was heavy upon the Israelites, their cries for deliverance echoing through the valleys and hills. Fear and uncertainty permeated their lives, with the Philistines controlling every aspect. The future seemed bleak, with no hope of escape from their torment. The Israelites yearned for a savior, a champion to break their chains and free them. Their cries reached the heavens, but the answer was unexpected and surprising. In the tribe of Dan, in Zorah, lived Manoah and his wife, a devout couple longing for a child. Year after year their hopes were dashed, their hearts heavy with the pain of barrenness.
The constant reminder of my empty womb is a source of immense grief. I yearn to cradle a child in my arms, to feel the joy of motherhood.
Manoah, too, felt the sting of their childlessness, longing for an heir. Despite their sorrow, they remained steadfast in their faith, offering sacrifices and prayers. They clung to the belief that God would one day answer their prayers. Little did they know that their prayers were about to be answered in a way that would surpass their wildest imaginations. Their faith would soon be rewarded with a divine promise. One day, as Manoah's wife sat alone in the fields, a radiant figure appeared before her. It was an angel of the Lord, his presence filling the air with an otherworldly glow.
You will conceive and bear a son destined for greatness. He is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from birth. He must abstain from wine and strong drink, and his hair must never be cut.
Overwhelmed, Manoah's wife rushed to tell her husband.
Manoah, an angel appeared to me. He said we will have a son destined for greatness.
Manoah, initially skeptical, listened intently as his wife described the encounter. A flicker of hope began to ignite within his heart. Could this be the answer to their years of prayer? The promise of a child filled them with wonder and anticipation. They knew their lives were about to change in unimaginable ways. Manoah, overwhelmed by the news, poured out his heart to God.
O Lord, please let the angel return, so that we may learn more about the child's upbringing and the specific duties that await him.
He recognized the significance of the angel's visit, understanding it was not an ordinary occurrence. He felt a deep sense of responsibility to ensure that his son fulfilled the destiny laid out before him. Manoah's prayer was a testament to his faith and his desire to follow God's will. He knew the birth of this child was a divine intervention with far-reaching implications for Israel. He waited anxiously for a response, his heart filled with excitement and trepidation. He yearned for wisdom and understanding to raise his son according to God's plan. His faith would soon be rewarded with divine guidance. The angel reappeared to Manoah's wife as she sat alone, deep in thought and prayer.
Remember, the child must be raised according to the Nazirite vow, a sacred commitment to God. He is to be set apart for God's service from birth, destined for a higher calling.
Upon hearing of the angel's return, Manoah rushed to join his wife, eager to hear the divine message.
Please tell us more about the specific requirements of the Nazirite vow so we may follow them faithfully.
The angel patiently answered Manoah's questions, providing detailed instructions.
The child must abstain from wine and strong drink, avoiding all forms of intoxication, and his hair must remain uncut, a visible sign of his vow. These outward signs symbolize the inner dedication and purity required of a Nazirite, a life set apart for holiness.
The angel's words instilled a sense of awe and reverence in Manoah, filling him with a profound sense of responsibility.
We understand the profound significance of this task, and we are committed to it wholeheartedly. Our son is not just our child, but a chosen vessel for God's divine purpose, a beacon of hope and faith.
Manoah realized their son was destined for a divine purpose, a mission that would require unwavering dedication, and vowed to ensure he fulfilled his destiny, no matter the challenges they might face. They were ready to embrace the challenge, dedicating their lives to supporting their son's sacred mission with faith as their guide. Their faith and commitment would guide them on this extraordinary journey, a path marked by divine purpose and unwavering devotion. Manoah, wanting to honor the divine messenger, prepared a burnt offering.
Let us prepare a burnt offering to honor this divine messenger.
As the flames licked the offering, a miraculous event unfolded.
Look, the angel is ascending towards heaven in the flames.
Manoah and his wife watched in stunned silence as the divine messenger disappeared.
We have witnessed a miracle. This confirms the divine nature of our encounter and solidifies our faith in the promise.
They knew their son was destined for greatness, a champion chosen by God to deliver his people.
We are part of something much larger than ourselves. This divine plan will unfold in the years to come.
The ascending angel left an indelible mark on their hearts, strengthening their resolve. They were filled with purpose and anticipation, eager to witness the prophecy's fulfillment. The Nazirite vow, a sacred commitment to God, was central to Samson's destiny. It dictated a life of separation and dedication, a life set apart for divine service. The vow required abstinence from wine and strong drink, symbolizing purity and self-control. It also mandated that his hair never be cut, representing his consecration to God. This vow was not merely a set of rules, but a way of life, a testament to Samson's special relationship with God. It was a constant reminder of his divine purpose, his calling to deliver the Israelites from the Philistines. The vow shaped his identity and destiny, setting him apart from ordinary men. Samson's adherence to the Nazirite vow would inspire and strengthen his people, giving them hope in their darkest hour. His birth was a miracle, a testament to the power of faith and divine intervention. The joy of parenthood filled Manoah and his wife's hearts, erasing years of sorrow. They marveled at their son, recognizing the divine spark within him. They dedicated themselves to raising Samson according to the Nazirite vow, instilling in him the values of faith, obedience, and dedication to God. They knew he was not just their son, but a gift to their people, a beacon of hope. Samson's birth marked a turning point in Israel's history, the beginning of a new chapter filled with promise and peril. We named him Samson, meaning son, a fitting name for a child who would bring light and hope. In due time, my wife gave birth to a son, just as the angel had foretold. Samson's birth was a divine intervention with far-reaching consequences for Israel, marking the beginning of a new era. He was born with a specific purpose, to deliver his people from the oppressive rule of the Philistines, who had long tormented the Israelites. From a young age, Samson displayed extraordinary physical strength, a sign of divine power and favor bestowed upon him. This strength would be instrumental in his struggle against the Philistines, enabling him to perform feats of incredible might, such as breaking chains and lifting city gates. He was a warrior chosen by God, a champion destined to break the chains of oppression and lead his people to freedom. Samson's purpose was not just about physical liberation. It was also about spiritual renewal and guiding his people back to righteousness. His role was to inspire the Israelites to return to God, to rekindle their faith and reclaim their identity as God's chosen people, united in their devotion. Through his actions, he would demonstrate the importance of remaining true to God's commandments, even in the face of adversity and overwhelming challenges.
My life is a testament to the power of faith and obedience, showing that true strength lies in unwavering belief. True strength comes from God, not from human might, and it is through him that we find our true purpose and power.
The story of Samson's birth is a powerful reminder of the enduring power of faith, a testament to the strength that belief can bring into our lives. It demonstrates that even in the darkest of times, when hope seems lost, God can intervene in miraculous ways, bringing light and life where there was once only despair. It teaches us that faith is not just about believing in something unseen, but about trusting in God's plan, even when we don't fully understand it. This trust can guide us through the most challenging moments. Manoah and his wife's unwavering faith, despite their years of barrenness, is an inspiration to us all. Their story shows that patience and perseverance in faith can lead to miraculous outcomes. Their story encourages us to persevere in prayer, to never give up hope, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable obstacles. It reminds us that persistence in faith can yield extraordinary results. Samson's life, though filled with both triumphs and tragedies, serves as a powerful example of the consequences of both obedience and disobedience. His journey is a lesson in the importance of staying true to one's faith. His story highlights the importance of remaining true to our commitments and the dangers of straying from the path of righteousness. It serves as a cautionary tale for all who seek to live a life of faith. The birth of Samson is a timeless tale of faith, divine intervention and destiny, reminding us that God can use ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. It is a story that continues to inspire and uplift believers across generations.
Samson stands as a towering figure in biblical history, a man of incredible strength chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from the oppressive rule of the Philistines. His story, a dramatic blend of power, passion, and tragedy, unfolds during a turbulent period in Israelite history. Samson's life, though marked by extraordinary feats of strength, is also a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked desires and the devastating consequences of succumbing to temptation. He was a Nazirite dedicated from birth to God and granted supernatural strength to fulfill his divine purpose. He was to be a champion for his people, a deliverer who would break the chains of Philistine dominance. His extraordinary strength was not merely a physical attribute, but a manifestation of God's power working through him. It was a gift meant to be used for the liberation of his people, a tool to break the yoke of oppression. However, Samson's story is not simply one of triumphant heroism. While empowered by God, Samson was also burdened by his own flaws, his susceptibility to temptation, and his volatile nature. His tale serves as a stark reminder that even those chosen by God are not immune to the human condition. Samson's story takes a dramatic turn when he becomes enamored with a Philistine woman from Timnah. This attraction sets the stage for a series of events that would have profound consequences for Samson and his people. For Samson, a Nazirite dedicated to serving God and liberating his people, to fall in love with a woman from the enemy camp was a dangerous and controversial decision. His parents, deeply concerned about the implications of this union, pleaded with him to choose a wife from among his own people. Marriage in those times was not simply a personal matter, but a social and political act, a way of forging alliances and solidifying tribal identities.
Despite my parents' pleas, I remained resolute in my desire to marry the Philistine woman.
This act of defiance foreshadowed the pattern of impulsive behavior that would characterize much of Samson's life. Samson's insistence on marrying the Philistine woman reveals a crucial aspect of his character, his strong will and his tendency to follow his own desires. This headstrong nature, while contributing to his incredible strength and daring, also proved to be his greatest weakness. It would lead him down a path of conflict, betrayal, and ultimately tragedy. The conflict between the Israelites and the Philistines was not merely a political struggle for land and resources. It was a clash of cultures, religions, and ways of life. The Israelites, followers of the one true God, Yahweh, were a pastoral people, deeply rooted in their ancestral traditions and religious practices. The Philistines, on the other hand, were a seafaring people, originating from the Aegean region, who had settled along the coastal plains of Canaan. They worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, and their culture was characterized by a more materialistic and militaristic ethos. The Philistines, with their advanced weaponry and organized military, posed a constant threat to the Israelites. This oppression created a climate of fear and resentment among the Israelites, who longed for a leader who could deliver them from Philistine domination. Samson, with his God-given strength, was seen as the fulfillment of this hope, the champion who would restore their freedom and dignity. The cultural and religious differences between the two peoples further exacerbated the conflict. Samson's marriage to a Philistine woman was not simply a personal choice, it was a symbolic act that highlighted the deep divisions between the two cultures. On his way to Timnah to visit his betrothed, Samson encountered a young lion. This encounter would become a pivotal moment in his story, a dramatic display of his supernatural strength and a foreshadowing of the events to come. Without any weapon, relying solely on his God-given strength, Samson tore the lion apart with his bare hands. This act of raw power demonstrated the extraordinary nature of his abilities and confirmed his role as a divinely chosen champion. Later, on his return journey, Samson came across the carcass of the lion. To his surprise, he found a swarm of bees had built a hive within the lion's remains, and the carcass was filled with honey. This discovery of honey in the lion's carcass carried a symbolic meaning. The lion, initially a symbol of danger and death, had been transformed into a source of sweetness and nourishment.
This act of sharing the honey can be seen as a symbolic sharing of my victory over the lion, a testament to the joy and hope that my strength brought to my family and, by extension, to my people.
This juxtaposition of strength and sweetness, violence and nourishment would become a recurring theme in Samson's life. During the week-long wedding feast, Samson posed a riddle to the Philistine wedding guests.
Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet.
This riddle, drawn from his encounter with the lion and the honey, was not merely a playful game. It was a challenge to the Philistines, a test of their wit and a subtle assertion of his own superiority. The Philistines, unfamiliar with this specific event, were baffled by the riddle. Unable to solve the riddle themselves, the Philistines resorted to threats and coercion to extract the answer from Samson's wife. They threatened to burn her and her father's house if she did not reveal the answer. Under duress, Samson's wife succumbed to the pressure and betrayed her husband's trust. She pleaded with Samson to reveal the answer, using tears and emotional manipulation to wear down his resolve. Samson, blinded by his love for her, finally relented and told her the answer. This betrayal marked a turning point in Samson's story, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to violence, revenge, and ultimately tragedy.
Betrayal's sting. Samson's wife's betrayal cut him deeply.
Her act of betrayal shattered that trust, revealing the fragility of their relationship and the deep cultural divide that separated them. Samson felt not only the sting of personal betrayal, but also the humiliation of being outsmarted by his enemies.
The Philistines, through their manipulation of my wife, had gained a victory over me, albeit a small one, but it was a victory nonetheless.
The Philistines, armed with the answer provided by Samson's wife, triumphantly presented the solution to the riddle.
Enraged by the betrayal and humiliation, I realized the extent of my wife's deception.
This realization marked a turning point in his life, a moment of disillusionment and a hardening of his heart.
The betrayal also exposed my own vulnerability.
This experience would leave a lasting scar on his heart, making him more cautious and distrustful in the future.
Vengeance unleashed. Burning with anger and a thirst for revenge, I set out to avenge the humiliation I had suffered at the hands of the Philistines.
He traveled to Ashkelon, a Philistine city, and killed 30 men, taking their garments to pay the forfeit for losing the riddle bet.
My act of vengeance was swift and merciless.
The 30 Philistine men he killed were not merely innocent bystanders. They represented the enemy, the oppressors who had humiliated him and threatened his wife.
Taking their garments was not simply an act of plunder. It was a symbolic gesture of stripping them of their dignity and honor.
By using their garments to pay the forfeit for the riddle, Samson was making a mockery of their traditions and customs.
A violent retribution marked a turning point in my story.
It was a clear indication that he was no longer willing to tolerate the Philistines' oppression and that he would use his God-given strength to fight against them. This act of vengeance, however, would not bring an end to the conflict. It would only fuel the cycle of violence, drawing Samson deeper into a spiral of revenge and destruction.
The cycle of violence. My act of vengeance against the Philistines in Ashkelon did not bring an end to the conflict. Instead, It ignited a cycle of violence that would continue to escalate.
The Philistines, enraged by Samson's killing of their men, retaliated by burning Samson's wife and her father. This act of brutality demonstrated the ruthlessness of the Philistines and their willingness to resort to extreme measures to exact revenge.
The death of my wife and her father further fueled my rage and strengthened my resolve to fight against the Philistines.
He saw their deaths as a direct result of the Philistines' treachery and their unwillingness to honor the terms of the riddle.
My response to the Philistines' retaliation was swift and devastating.
He used his superhuman strength to wreak havoc among them, striking fear into their hearts and demonstrating his unwavering commitment to their destruction. This cycle would ultimately lead to his downfall, highlighting the destructive nature of unchecked anger and the tragic consequences of pursuing vengeance. Divine intervention. Throughout his life, Samson's extraordinary strength was attributed to divine intervention. He was a Nazirite dedicated to God from birth, and his strength was a gift from God granted to him for a specific purpose: to deliver the Israelites from Philistine oppression. His strength was not simply a physical attribute, it was a manifestation of God's power working through him. Samson's strength was not constant, it was contingent on his obedience to the Nazirite vow. This vow included abstaining from alcohol, avoiding contact with dead bodies, and not cutting his hair. As long as he adhered to these restrictions, God's power flowed through him, granting him superhuman strength. However, his susceptibility to temptation and his volatile nature often led him astray. This internal struggle between divine purpose and human fallibility would ultimately define his tragic story.
Samson stands as a colossal figure in the biblical narrative, a judge of Israel endowed with superhuman strength. Chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from Philistine oppression, his life was marked by impulsive actions and passionate love. Born under a Nazirite vow, Samson was dedicated to God from birth. This vow demanded abstinence from alcohol and the cutting of his hair. His uncut hair was the source of his incredible strength. Samson was capable of feats that defied human explanation. He was a beacon of hope for the Israelites. Despite his flaws, Samson remains a compelling figure, a warrior fighting for his people in a brutal world. His legacy is one of both triumph and tragedy. Samson's heart, though strong, was not immune to the allure of love. He fell for a Philistine woman, an act that would change his life forever. His parents disapproved, but Samson's desire was too strong. The Philistines saw an opportunity to exploit his affections. They pressured Samson's wife to betray him. Torn between loyalty and fear, she succumbed. The betrayal cut Samson deeply, igniting a desire for revenge. His love turned to ashes, consumed by righteous anger. This marked a turning point, transforming him into a vengeful warrior. The stage was set for a bloody confrontation. Consumed by a burning desire for retribution, Samson devised a plan to strike at the heart of Philistine prosperity: their crops. He knew that their economy depended on the harvest, and he sought to cripple them where it hurt most. Samson captured 300 foxes, a feat of strength and cunning in itself. He then paired them tail to tail, attaching torches between them. With a flick of his wrist, Samson released the foxes into the Philistine fields. The animals, driven by instinct and fear, scattered across the landscape, carrying the flames with them. The dry crops ignited instantly, the fire spreading rapidly through the fields, consuming everything in its path. The night sky was illuminated by the inferno, a testament to Samson's wrath and the destructive power of his vengeance. The Philistines watched in horror as their livelihood went up in smoke. Samson's vengeance was swift and merciless, a force of nature unleashed upon those who dared to cross him. The Philistines had underestimated his wrath, and they would soon learn the true extent of his power. The Philistines, enraged by the destruction of their crops, sought retribution. They targeted Samson's wife and her family, holding them responsible for his actions. They burned them alive, a brutal act of revenge that further fueled Samson's rage. This act of barbarity crossed a line, transforming a conflict over crops into a blood feud. Samson's grief and fury intensified, hardening his heart against the Philistines. He vowed to avenge the deaths of his wife and her family, to make the Philistines pay for their cruelty. With renewed determination, Samson descended upon the Philistines, slaughtering them without mercy. He tore through their ranks like a lion among sheep, his strength unmatched. The Philistines, once confident in their numbers, now trembled before his might. They had unleashed a monster, and they were now paying the price. The conflict had escalated beyond control, spiraling into a vortex of violence and retribution. Driven by an insatiable thirst for vengeance, Samson found himself in Lehi, facing a Philistine army. Outnumbered and seemingly outmatched, he grabbed the jawbone of a donkey, an unlikely weapon in the hands of an ordinary man. But Samson was no ordinary man. He wielded the jawbone with ferocious strength, turning a simple farm tool into an instrument of divine wrath. With the jawbone in hand, Samson charged into the Philistine ranks, a whirlwind of death and destruction. He swung the bone with terrifying force, each blow crushing skulls and shattering bones. The Philistines fell before him like wheat before a scythe, their numbers dwindling with each swing of the jawbone. 1,000 Philistines fell before Samson's might, their bodies piling up around him like a gruesome testament to his power. The Philistines, once confident in their superior numbers, were now routed, fleeing in terror from the man who wielded the jawbone like a god of war. Samson stood amidst the carnage, a solitary figure silhouetted against the setting sun, the jawbone dripping with Philistine blood. The Battle of Lehi cemented Samson's reputation as a fearsome warrior. Following his devastating victory at Lehi, Samson found himself betrayed by the men of Judah, his own people. They bound him with ropes, intending to deliver him to the Philistines. They feared the Philistines' reprisal and chose to sacrifice Samson to appease their enemies. As the Philistines approached, their shouts of triumph echoing through the air, Samson's spirit remained unbroken. The ropes that bound him were mere constraints on his physical body, not his indomitable will. With a mighty roar, Samson snapped the ropes that bound him as if they were mere threads. He grabbed the nearest weapon, the jawbone of a donkey once again. The Philistines, who had come to collect their prize, were met with a whirlwind of destruction. Samson's escape from Lehi was a testament to his indomitable spirit and his unwavering faith in God. He had been betrayed by his own people, handed over to his enemies, yet he emerged victorious. Samson's exploits continued, his reputation as a fearsome warrior preceding him. He ventured into Gaza, a Philistine city, a bold and audacious move. The Philistines, aware of his presence, laid a trap for him, closing the city gates and posting guards, hoping to capture him in the morning. They underestimated Samson's strength and his cunning. Under the cover of darkness, Samson approached the city gates. He found them heavily fortified, guarded by Philistine soldiers. With a mighty heave, Samson tore the gates from their hinges, lifting them, along with the posts and bar. He carried them to the top of a nearby hill, a feat of strength that defied human comprehension. This act was not just a display of power. It was a symbolic gesture of defiance. Samson's actions in Gaza sent a clear message to the Philistines. He was not afraid of them. His actions inspired fear and awe in equal measure, making him a legend in his own time. After his Herculean feat in Gaza, Samson found himself parched with thirst. He cried out to God, his voice filled with desperation. God, hearing Samson's plea, answered his prayer in a miraculous way. A spring erupted from the jawbone he had used to slay the Philistines at Lehi. The dry bone, a symbol of death and destruction, became a source of life-giving water. Samson drank deeply from the spring, his thirst quenched, his body revitalized. The spring that erupted from the jawbone became known as En Hakore, meaning the spring of the caller. It was a testament to the power of faith and the unwavering bond between God and his chosen warrior. This miracle served as a beacon of hope for the Israelites, a reminder that God was on their side. Samson's life was a complex tapestry of strength, weakness, and divine intervention. He was a judge of Israel, a warrior chosen by God to deliver his people from Philistine oppression. He possessed superhuman strength, a gift that allowed him to perform incredible feats of power, but he was also flawed, driven by passion, and prone to impulsive actions. His story is a reminder that even the most extraordinary individuals are subject to human frailties. Samson's legacy is one of both triumph and tragedy. He achieved great victories against the Philistines, inspiring hope and courage in his people. But his life was also marked by personal loss and ultimately self-destruction. Despite his flaws, Samson remains a compelling figure in biblical history. His story continues to resonate with readers today, offering valuable lessons about faith, redemption, and the human condition. Samson's story is a testament to the complexities of human nature. Samson's story is a powerful exploration of the cycle of violence and the possibility of redemption. His acts of vengeance, while initially driven by righteous anger, ultimately led to further bloodshed and suffering. Despite the violence that permeated his life, Samson's story ultimately ends with an act of redemption. In his final act of defiance, he brings down the temple of Dagon, killing himself and a multitude of Philistines. Samson's death becomes a sacrifice, a final act of service to his people. This ending highlights the complex and often paradoxical nature of redemption. Samson's story offers valuable insights into the human condition. His struggles with his own flaws and his ultimate triumph over adversity make him a relatable and compelling figure. Samson's legacy continues to inspire and challenge us, prompting us to reflect on the complexities of human nature and the enduring power of the human spirit. Samson was different. He was special. God had chosen him. He was incredibly strong. He was a Nazirite, set apart from birth. This meant he had special rules to follow, rules that were sacred and binding. He couldn't cut his hair, a symbol of his vow to God. His hair was the source of his strength, a divine gift that set him apart. He was a judge over Israel, a leader chosen to guide and protect. He protected his people from their enemies, standing as their shield. He was a powerful warrior, unmatched in strength and courage. He was a symbol of hope, a beacon for the oppressed. Samson was known throughout the land, his name spoken with reverence and awe. Stories of his feats of strength were legendary, passed down through generations.
He once killed a lion with his bare hands, a testament to his incredible power. He tore a city gate off its hinges, an act that left many in awe. He single-handedly defeated an entire army, a feat that seemed impossible. His name struck fear into the hearts of the Philistines. They feared his power, his might. They plotted to destroy him, seeking ways to undermine his strength.
His strength was a gift from God. It was a responsibility, a burden he carried. Samson was supposed to use his strength for good, to serve his people. He was to protect the Israelites, to be their guardian. He was to lead them, to guide them through their trials. Samson struggled with his desires, a constant battle within. He often gave in to temptation, his human flaws evident. Samson's incredible strength made him a legend, a figure of myth and reality. He used his gifts for good, fighting off the Philistines, defending his people. He was a symbol of hope for the Israelites, their hero in dark times. But he also faced internal struggles, battles that were not seen. He was often tempted by his desires, leading him astray. This would lead him down a dangerous path, one fraught with peril. This path would test his faith, his resolve, and ultimately, his destiny. Delilah lived in the valley of Sorek. She was beautiful. She was captivating. She was also manipulative, a woman who knew how to use her charm to get what she wanted. The Philistine lords approached her with a proposition that would change her life forever. They offered her a bribe, a substantial amount of silver. They wanted her to discover the secret of Samson's strength. They promised her riches beyond her wildest dreams. Delilah was intrigued by the offer. The promise of wealth and power was too tempting to resist. She saw an opportunity for personal gain, a chance to elevate her status and secure her future. She agreed to their plan, knowing full well the risks involved. She began to weave her web of deception around Samson, using her beauty and charm to ensnare him. She knew he was susceptible to the charms of women, a weakness she would exploit to the fullest. She would use this to her advantage, playing the role of a loving partner while hiding her true intentions.
Samson was drawn to Delilah's beauty, unable to see the danger that lay beneath her enchanting exterior. He was blinded by his desire, completely under her spell. He fell in love with her, believing her to be the woman of his dreams. He began to spend more and more time with her, sharing his thoughts and feelings. He shared secrets with her, secrets that should have remained hidden. He trusted her, a dangerous mistake that would cost him dearly.
Delilah pretended to love Samson, playing the part of a devoted partner. She showered him with affection, making him believe in her sincerity. She feigned concern for his well-being, always ready with a comforting word or gesture. All the while, she was plotting his downfall, carefully planning each step of her betrayal. She was a pawn in the Philistines' game, but she played her part with skill and cunning. She was playing a dangerous game, one that would have dire consequences for both her and Samson. Delilah began to question Samson about his strength, her eyes filled with curiosity and a hint of something more. She asked him how he was so powerful, her voice laced with feigned innocence. She pretended to be concerned, her expressions carefully crafted to appear genuine. She said she wanted to know how to protect him, claiming her intentions were pure and selfless. Samson, blinded by love, gave her vague answers. Delilah persisted. She nagged him constantly, never relenting in her quest for the truth. She told him she couldn't trust him if he wouldn't tell her his secret, planting seeds of doubt in his mind. She used tears and manipulation, her sobs echoing through the room. She played on his emotions, her words carefully chosen to break down his resistance. Samson continued to resist, but his resolve was weakening.
Samson gave her false secrets, hoping to satisfy her curiosity without revealing the truth. He told her if he were tied with green withes, he would lose his strength. The Philistines bound him. He easily broke free. Delilah was frustrated, her plan foiled. She accused him of lying, her anger barely contained. She continued to pressure him, her persistence unwavering.
Delilah's persistence began to wear Samson down. He loved her deeply. He wanted to make her happy, to see her smile. He didn't want to lose her. The thought of her leaving was unbearable. But he also knew the importance of his strength, a gift from the divine. He was torn between love and duty, his heart and mind in constant conflict. He was in a dangerous predicament with no clear path to follow. Delilah continued her relentless pursuit of Samson's secret. She pleaded with him, she cried, she accused him of not loving her. Samson finally broke down. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her. He confessed his secret.
He told her that if his hair were shaved, he would lose his strength. He told her he was a Nazirite. He told her his strength came from God. He had placed his trust in the wrong person.
Delilah knew she finally had him. She sent for the Philistine lords. She lulled Samson to sleep. She called for a man to shave his head. Samson's strength left him. He was vulnerable. Samson had betrayed his vow to God. He had given in to his desires. He had trusted a woman who was using him. He had made a terrible mistake. He would soon face the consequences. Section 5, Shorn and Bound, Samson's capture.
The Philistines seized Samson.
They were overjoyed. They had finally captured their enemy.
They bound him with bronze chains. They gouged out his eyes.
They took him to Gaza. Samson was a shadow of his former self. He was weak. He was blind. He was a prisoner. He was forced to grind grain in the prison. He was humiliated.
He was a spectacle for the Philistines. They mocked him. They taunted him. They celebrated their victory. They thought they had finally broken him.
Samson was now experiencing the consequences of his actions. He had lost everything, his strength, his freedom, his dignity. He was at the mercy of his enemies. Section 6, Blinded and Broken, Samson's humiliation.
Samson toiled in the prison. He ground grain day and night. He was surrounded by the sounds of his enemies. He was constantly reminded of his defeat. He was filled with regret.
He thought about his life. He thought about his choices. He realized the depth of his mistakes. He had betrayed his God. He had betrayed his people. He was lost and alone.
The Philistines continued to mock him. They held feasts in his honor. They paraded him around like a trophy. They reveled in his humiliation. They thought they had defeated him completely.
Samson's spirit was broken. He was a shell of the mighty warrior he once was. He was living in darkness, both physically and spiritually. He had reached rock bottom.
In his despair, Samson began to pray. He cried out to God. He confessed his sins. He asked for forgiveness. He asked for one last chance. He wanted to redeem himself. He prayed for strength. He knew his hair was beginning to grow back. He knew God might give him another opportunity. He wanted to use his remaining strength for good. He wanted to strike a blow against his enemies.
God heard Samson's prayer. He saw his repentance. He saw his desire for redemption. He decided to give Samson one last chance. He restored Samson's strength. Samson was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew this was his final opportunity. He would use it wisely. He would make amends for his past mistakes. He would glorify God. The Philistines gathered in the temple of Dagon. They were celebrating their victory over Samson. They brought Samson out to entertain them. They wanted to mock him one last time.
Samson was led to the center of the temple. He stood between the two main pillars. He reached out and grasped the pillars. He knew what he had to do. He prayed for strength one last time.
Samson pushed with all his might. The pillars crumbled. The temple collapsed. The Philistines were crushed. Samson died along with his enemies. He had made the ultimate sacrifice. Samson's final act was an act of redemption. He had given his life to defeat his enemies. He had avenged his people. He had glorified God. He had found redemption in his sacrifice. Samson's story is a story of redemption. It is a story of how even the greatest failures can find forgiveness. It is a story of how God can use even the most flawed individuals for his purposes. Samson's life was full of mistakes. He gave in to temptation. He betrayed his vows. He suffered the consequences of his actions. But in the end, he found redemption. His story is a reminder that it is never too late to turn to God. It is never too late to ask for forgiveness. It is never too late to make amends. Samson's legacy is one of hope and redemption. Samson's tale is a powerful testament to the possibility of second chances. It teaches us that even in our darkest moments, we can find redemption through faith and repentance. His story continues to inspire us today. Samson's story teaches us valuable lessons about faith, forgiveness, and redemption. We learn that even the strongest among us can fall prey to temptation. We learn the importance of staying true to our values. We also learn about the power of forgiveness. God forgave Samson for his mistakes. He gave him a second chance. We too can find forgiveness for our sins if we truly repent. Redemption is always possible. No matter how far we stray from God's path, we can always find our way back. Samson's story is a testament to this truth. His final act of sacrifice brought him redemption. Samson's story is a timeless tale that continues to resonate with us today. It reminds us of the importance of faith, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption, even in the face of our greatest failures. It is a story of hope and second chances.
The story unfolds in the rugged hill country of Ephraim, a time of tribal disunity and spiritual confusion in Israel. Here lived a man named Micah in a small, isolated homestead.
I lived in a time where the Israelites often strayed from their covenant with God, dabbling in the practices of the Canaanite peoples around them.
This spiritual ambiguity set the stage for Micah's tragic missteps. Micah was a man of some means, possessing enough wealth to support his family and engage in ventures that hinted at his spiritual restlessness.
The lack of centralized authority and the absence of strong prophetic voices contributed to a climate where personal interpretations of faith held sway.
This atmosphere of religious uncertainty made Micah vulnerable to the allure of idolatry. Micah's story is not just a historical account, it's a timeless parable.
We often seek spiritual shortcuts, looking for easy answers and tangible signs, rather than engaging in the difficult work of true faith.
Micah's actions mirror our own propensity to construct idols of comfort and convenience. The narrative begins with an act of theft. This theft sets in motion a chain of events that will ultimately lead to Micah's downfall. It reveals a fundamental flaw in his character, a willingness to compromise moral principles for personal gain. This act of dishonesty foreshadows the deeper spiritual transgressions that will follow. The narrative takes a dramatic turn when 1,100 shekels of silver are stolen from Micah's mother. This substantial sum represents a significant portion of the family's wealth.
The stolen silver becomes a symbol of the broken trust and fractured relationships that characterize Micah's world.
Micah's mother, a formidable woman, pronounces a bitter curse upon the thief. Her words carry weight, reflecting the power of maternal pronouncements in ancient Israelite society. The curse hangs heavy over the household, creating an atmosphere of fear and suspicion.
The curse also underscores the vulnerability and insecurity that permeated life in that era.
The story then reveals that the culprit is none other than Micah himself. His confession exposes the hypocrisy at the heart of his character.
Overcome with guilt and fear of the curse, I confess my deed. I return the stolen silver to my mother, relieved to have averted the potential consequences of her curse.
His relief, however, is short-lived, as his mother's reaction takes an unexpected turn. The return of the silver does not restore the broken trust within the family. Upon receiving the returned silver, Micah's mother's initial anger subsides. She experiences a surge of religious fervor, dedicating a portion of the silver to the Lord. Her intention is to create a carved image and a molten image.
Blessed be my son by the Lord.
Her actions demonstrate the syncretistic tendencies of the time, blending elements of Israelite faith with pagan practices. 200 shekels of the silver are given to a silversmith. He fashions the idols according to her instructions.
The creation of the idols marks a decisive step away from the true worship of Yahweh.
Micah's mother unknowingly sets her son on a path of spiritual ruin.
With the idols installed in my house, I establish a personal shrine. I create an ephod and teraphim, further solidifying my departure from Orthodox Israelite faith.
These objects, associated with divination and pagan worship, represent Micah's embrace of a syncretistic religion. The establishment of the shrine marks the culmination of Micah's spiritual rebellion. The creation of the idols is a pivotal moment in Micah's story. It represents his attempt to control the spiritual realm, to create a god in his own image. Micah's story serves as a cautionary tale against the dangers of syncretism. Micah appoints one of his sons as his priest. My actions reflect a broader trend in ancient Israelite society. The temptation to blend Israelite faith with Canaanite practices was a constant struggle. This act of self-appointment highlights the lack of true spiritual leadership in the land. The establishment of Micah's personal shrine creates a semblance of religious order within his household. However, this sense of order is built on a foundation of falsehood. Micah's shrine becomes a symbol of his spiritual blindness and his rejection of the true God. The shrine, intended to bring peace, ultimately leads to further spiritual decay. Micah's actions reflect a desire for spiritual control and a rejection of the true God's sovereignty. He creates a priesthood within our own household, solidifying his control over the spiritual realm. Section 5, a wandering Levite. The narrative then introduces a new character, a young Levite from Bethlehem in Judah.
Yes, but I'm wandering through the land seeking employment.
His presence highlights the social and economic instability of the time. The Levite's wandering reflects the breakdown of traditional social structures and the lack of opportunity for those trained in religious service. The Levite's arrival at Micah's house is a fateful encounter.
Welcome to my home. I offer you a position as my personal priest.
The Levite's willingness to serve in Micah's household shrine further blurs the lines between true faith and idolatry.
Thank you. I accept your offer.
This arrangement benefits both parties. Micah gains a priest to officiate at his shrine, lending it a semblance of authenticity.
Now I know that the Lord will be good to me since I have a Levite as my priest.
This statement reveals Micah's profound misunderstanding of God's character and requirements. He believes that outward religious rituals performed by a designated priest are sufficient to guarantee God's blessing. Section 6, a priestly pact. Micah formalizes his agreement with the Levite. He offers him an annual salary, clothing, and board in exchange for his priestly services.
I will provide you with an annual salary, clothing, and board.
The exchange of goods and services for spiritual leadership underscores the corruption of true worship.
I accept your offer. The stability and security are what I need.
The Levite accepts Micah's offer, content with the stability and security it provides. He seemingly disregards the unorthodox nature of Micah's shrine and the implications of serving as a priest in a setting that deviates so drastically from established religious practice.
Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, for I have a Levite as my priest.
Micah rejoices at having secured a Levite priest. He believes that his household shrine is now complete, fully equipped to ensure God's favor. The agreement between Micah and the Levites solidifies the establishment of the household shrine. It creates a sense of normalcy and legitimacy around Micah's idolatrous practices. This sense of normalcy, however, masks the underlying spiritual corruption. Section 7. Micah's delusion. Micah's confidence in his fabricated religious system stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of God's character.
Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, for I have a Levite as my priest.
Micah's actions demonstrate the dangers of self-deception and the human tendency to create gods in our own image. He equates the presence of a Levite priest with God's favor, ignoring the fundamental importance of obedience to God's law. Micah's focus on outward appearances blinds him to the true nature of worship. He substitutes ritual for relationship, form for substance. Micah's story serves as a warning against the dangers of straying from God's revealed truth. The story of Micah's idols highlights the human tendency to seek security and comfort in tangible objects and rituals. However, this sense of security is ultimately illusory. Section 8. The Danites' discovery. The narrative takes another turn with the arrival of the Danites. This tribe, seeking territory of their own, sends out spies to explore the land.
Yes, I serve as the priest here at Micah's shrine.
The Danite spies encounter the young Levite at Micah's house. They inquire about the nature of the shrine and the Levite's role within it. The Levite's responses reveal the extent to which Micah's unorthodox religious practices have gained a semblance of legitimacy. The Danites, impressed by the presence of a Levite priest and the apparent sanctity of Micah's shrine, take note of its location. They plan to return later with their tribe to claim the idols and the Levite for themselves. The encounter foreshadows the impending conflict and the further corruption of religious practice. Section 9. A stolen priesthood. The Danites return with their tribe and seize the idols, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image from Micah's household shrine. They also coerce the Levite into joining them, offering him a more prestigious position as priest to their entire tribe.
Give me back my idols and my priest.
Micah, upon discovering the theft, gathers his clansmen and pursues the Danites. He confronts them, demanding the return of his idols and his priest. However, the Danites, stronger in number and emboldened by their acquisition of religious artifacts, refuse to relinquish their prize. Micah's pleas fall on deaf ears. The Danites threaten Micah and his clansmen, warning them against further pursuit. Fearing for their safety, Micah and his men reluctantly return home, empty-handed and disillusioned. Section 10. The Bitter Harvest. Micah's story concludes on a somber note. He is left with nothing but the bitter realization that his attempts to manipulate God's favor have failed. Micah's experience serves as a cautionary tale against the dangers of syncretism and the human tendency to create gods in our own image. The story of Micah's idols highlights the importance of genuine faith and obedience to God's word. True worship is not about outward displays of piety or the performance of rituals, but about a heartfelt relationship with the one true God. Micah's misguided attempts to secure God's favor through material objects and fabricated religious practices ultimately lead to spiritual emptiness and disappointment. The narrative underscores the importance of discerning true religious leadership from false prophets. The story of Micah's idols serves as a timeless reminder of the importance of seeking truth and adhering to God's revealed will. True spiritual fulfillment is not found in material possessions or fabricated religious systems, but in a genuine relationship with the divine. The Book of Judges paints a vivid picture of a turbulent time in Israel's history, a period filled with uncertainty and constant change. It was a period marked by the absence of a central authority where leadership was decentralized and often contested. a time when every man did that which was right in his own eyes, leading to a society governed by individual judgment and personal morality. Amidst this chaotic backdrop, the tribe of Dan found themselves in a precarious position, struggling to find their place in the land of Israel. They were a landless tribe, their allotted inheritance insufficient to support their growing population, leaving them in a state of constant need. Their plight was a constant source of frustration and anxiety as they grappled with the harsh realities of their situation. The Danites yearned for a place to call their own, a territory where they could establish a stable and prosperous community, a territory where they could flourish and establish their roots, free from the uncertainties that plagued their current existence. Their situation was a stark contrast to the other tribes of Israel, who had settled into their designated lands and were building their futures. The lack of land created a sense of insecurity and vulnerability, fueling their desire for a permanent home where they could feel safe and secure. They felt like outsiders, constantly on the fringes of the Israelite community, struggling to find acceptance and stability. The Danites' predicament became a defining aspect of their tribal identity, shaping their actions and decisions. They were driven by a deep-seated need for stability and security, a yearning that influenced their every move, a yearning for a place where they could thrive, build their homes, and create a lasting legacy for future generations. This desire for land would eventually lead them on a journey fraught with both danger and opportunity, a quest that would test their limits. Their quest would test their resolve and shape their destiny in profound ways, leaving an indelible mark on their history. The story of the Danites' search for a new home is a compelling narrative of ambition, conflict, and ultimately compromise, reflecting the broader struggles of the Israelite tribes. It underscores the challenges faced by the Israelites during the period of the Judges and the lengths to which tribes would go to secure their future, highlighting their resilience and determination. Their story offers a glimpse into the complexities of tribal life and the enduring human desire for belonging and security, a timeless quest that resonates through the ages. Faced with their landless predicament, the Danites decided to take action. They could no longer wait for a solution to present itself. They chose 5 of their bravest and most resourceful men to scout the land, men who were known for their courage and wisdom. These scouts were tasked with searching for a suitable territory to claim as their own, a place where their people could thrive. These men were tasked with a mission of vital importance to the tribe's future, a mission that could change the fate of their people. They embarked on their journey with a sense of purpose and determination, knowing the weight of their responsibility. The 5 spies traveled throughout the land, carefully observing the terrain, assessing the resources, and noting every detail. They evaluated the potential for settlement, looking for fertile valleys and lands that could support agriculture. Their journey took them far from their tribal territory, into lands they had never seen before. They ventured into unfamiliar and potentially hostile regions, places where danger could lurk around any corner. They were venturing into the unknown, driven by the hope of finding a new home for their people, a place where they could finally settle. Driven by the hope of finding a new home for their people, they pressed on despite the challenges. Their travels eventually led them to the northern region of Canaan, a land known for its fertile valleys and abundant resources. This region was renowned for its lush valleys and rich agricultural lands, making it an ideal place for settlement. They disguised their true intentions, pretending to be ordinary travelers to avoid drawing attention. Pretending to be ordinary travelers, they blended in with the locals, gathering information discreetly. They were cautious and discreet, aware of the potential dangers they faced and the importance of their mission. Aware of the potential dangers they faced, they moved with caution, always on the lookout for threats. The spies were not merely looking for any piece of land, they sought a place that offered both security and prosperity. They were searching for a place that could provide a safe and prosperous future for their tribe.
We need a territory that can sustain our growing population, a place where we can build a future, and provide us with a strategic advantage, ensuring our safety and success. This mission is not only about finding a home, but also about securing the future of our tribe. Ensuring that we have a place to call our own.
Their mission was not only about finding a home, but also about securing the future of their tribe, a future filled with hope and promise, but also about securing the future of their tribe, ensuring that their people could thrive for generations to come. In their travels, the Danite spies stumbled upon the house of Micah, an Ephraimite man who had established a private shrine. This shrine was not just any ordinary place, it was a significant site that held deep religious and cultural importance. Inside, they found a carved image and other religious artifacts, each piece telling a story of devotion and faith. This encounter would prove to be a pivotal moment in their journey, setting in motion a chain of events with far-reaching consequences that none of them could have anticipated. Micah's house was a place of both religious significance and personal ambition. It was a sanctuary where he could express his faith and aspirations. He had hired a young Levite priest to serve in his household shrine, creating a localized center of worship that drew people from the surrounding areas. This arrangement reflected the decentralized nature of religious practice during the period of the Judges, a time when centralized authority was lacking.
Who is this young Levite priest? What is his story, and what brought him to Micah's house? Could he be persuaded to join us and provide spiritual leadership to our community? His presence could change everything for us.
The Danite spies were intrigued by the presence of the Levite priest. They saw an opportunity that could benefit their tribe immensely. They recognized the potential value of having a religious leader within their own community, someone who could guide them spiritually and provide a sense of unity. In a time of spiritual uncertainty, a priest could provide guidance and legitimacy to their claim on a new territory, offering a beacon of hope and stability.
My services are available, but what do you offer in return? What can you provide that will make it worth my while to leave my current position? I seek a place where I can serve and be valued, a community that will appreciate my role and the spiritual guidance I can offer.
The spies inquired about the priest's origins and his willingness to serve a different tribe. They needed to understand his motivations and what it would take to convince him. They saw him as a valuable asset, someone who could legitimize their claim to a new territory and provide spiritual leadership to their community, ensuring their success and cohesion.
This arrangement has worked well for me. Why would he leave now? What could possibly entice him to abandon his current position?
This encounter planted the seed of an idea, a notion that would grow and evolve over time, that would later have significant repercussions, altering the course of their journey and the fate of their people in ways they could not yet foresee. Continuing their journey northward, the spies reached the city of Laish. They found a peaceful and prosperous people, dwelling securely, unaware of the impending danger. The city was isolated and vulnerable, lacking fortifications and a standing army. It seemed like the perfect place for the Danites to settle.
Laish was situated in a fertile valley, blessed with abundant resources. The land was ideal for agriculture and offered the potential for economic prosperity. Our city's isolation meant that it was relatively unprotected, making it an easy target for conquest.
The spies observed the inhabitants of Laish, noting their peaceful nature and lack of military preparedness. They saw a people who were content with their simple lives, unaware of the threat posed by the land-hungry Danites. The city's vulnerability made it an attractive target for conquest. The spies returned to their tribe with a glowing report of Laish. They described a land of opportunity, a place where the Danites could finally establish a permanent home. Their report fueled the tribe's ambition and solidified their resolve to claim Laish as their own. Upon hearing the spies' report, the Danites mobilized for war. They gathered 600 armed men, a formidable force ready to conquer Laish. The tribe was united in their purpose, driven by the promise of a new home. They were prepared to fight for their future.
The Danites were not a large tribe, but they were determined and resourceful. We assembled our fighting force, equipping ourselves with weapons and supplies. We were prepared for a difficult journey and a fierce battle.
The journey to Laish was long and arduous. The Danites traveled through unfamiliar territory, facing potential dangers along the way. They were driven by their ambition and the hope of a better future. Their determination was fueled by the injustice they felt at being a landless tribe. They believed that they deserved a place to call their own, and they were willing to fight for it. The promise of Laish spurred them onward, giving them the strength to endure the hardships of the journey. On their way to Laish, the Danites passed by Micah's house once more. This time they were not merely passing through, they had a plan. Driven by their desire for religious legitimacy, they decided to steal Micah's religious artifacts and persuade his Levite priest to join them.
The Danites saw Micah's religious objects as symbols of divine favor. We believed that possessing these items would bolster our claim to Laish and ensure our success in the upcoming battle. Our actions were motivated by a mixture of ambition and religious pragmatism.
The Levite priest, tempted by the offer of a more prominent position within the Danite community, agreed to accompany them. I saw an opportunity for advancement and influence, a chance to serve a larger and more powerful group.
The Danites took the carved image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image from Micah's household. They convinced the Levite priest that it would be better for him to be a priest for a whole tribe rather than just one family. They offered him a position of greater influence and authority, appealing to his ambition. Micah, discovering the theft, pursued the Danites. He confronted them, demanding the return of his stolen property. He was outraged by their betrayal and determined to reclaim what was rightfully his.
You have taken my gods that I made, and the priest, and gone away. What have I left? How can you do this to me?
The Danites, however, were unwilling to relinquish their newly acquired religious symbols. They outnumbered Micah and his household, and they were prepared to defend their prize by force. They had gone too far to turn back now.
Micah's pleas fell on deaf ears. We dismissed his claims, asserting our right to the religious artifacts. The priest had willingly joined us, and the objects would be put to better use serving an entire tribe.
Realizing he was outnumbered and outmatched, Micah returned home, defeated and bitter. The Danites continued their journey to Laish, leaving Micah to lament his loss. The encounter highlighted the ruthlessness of the times and the lengths to which people would go to secure their interests.
The Book of Judges paints a bleak picture of ancient Israel. It was a time of tribalism and chaos. There was no king to unite the people. Moral decay was rampant. The Israelites often abandoned their covenant with God. They turned to the worship of idols. This spiritual void left them vulnerable to internal strife and external threats. The story of the Levite and his concubine unfolds against this backdrop of lawlessness and despair. It serves as a chilling example of the depths to which human behavior can sink. The land was divided into 12 tribes. Each tribe was largely autonomous. There was little sense of national unity. The story of Judges 19 highlights the fragility of society in the absence of a strong, just ruler. The story begins with the Levite's concubine leaving him. She returns to her father's house in Bethlehem. The reason for her departure is not explicitly stated. It is implied that there was some sort of disagreement or conflict between them. The Levite's journey to retrieve her reveals the complexities of their relationship. It hints at underlying tensions that will ultimately contribute to the tragic events that follow.
The Levite sets out for Bethlehem with his servant and 2 donkeys. The journey takes him through the rugged terrain of the Ephraimite hill country. This journey symbolizes my attempt to reconcile with my concubine. It also foreshadows the perilous journey we will later undertake together. The landscape itself reflects the harsh and unforgiving nature of the times.
Upon arriving at his father-in-law's house, the Levite is greeted warmly. He is invited to stay for several days. The father-in-law urges him to reconcile with his daughter. He showers him with hospitality. He tries to persuade him to remain longer. This initial hospitality contrasts sharply with the horrific reception they will later receive in Gibeah. After several days, the Levite finally decides to return home. His father-in-law continues to urge him to stay. He offers him further hospitality. However, the Levite insists on departing. This decision marks a turning point in the story. It sets them on the path towards the tragic events that await them in Gibeah.
As the day draws to a close, we reach Jebus, also known as Jerusalem. I decide against staying overnight in Jebus. I have concerns about the safety of staying in a city of foreigners. This decision, seemingly motivated by caution, ironically leads us to the far more dangerous city of Gibeah. We continue our journey as darkness falls. We eventually arrive near Gibeah, a city belonging to the tribe of Benjamin. We are weary from our travels and in need of shelter.
They enter the city square, hoping to find someone who will offer them hospitality for the night. This seemingly simple desire for rest will have devastating consequences. As they wait in the square, an old man from the hill country of Ephraim approaches them. The old man welcomes the Levite and his concubine into his home. He offers them food and a place to rest. This initial hospitality creates a false sense of security. It masks the depravity that lies beneath the surface of Gibeah's seemingly peaceful facade.
Please come in. You're welcome to stay in my home. I will provide food and a place for you to rest.
As the evening progresses, a group of wicked men from the city surrounds the house. They demand that the old man bring out the Levite so they can sexually assault him. This horrific demand reveals the true nature of the men of Gibeah. It foreshadows the violence that is about to unfold.
Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have our way with him.
The old man attempts to dissuade the mob. He offers them his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine instead. This desperate offer highlights the extreme danger of the situation. It raises profound moral and ethical questions about the choices people make under duress.
No, my friends, do not be so vile. Here, take my virgin daughter and this man's concubine. Do with them what you will, but do not do such a disgraceful thing to this man.
The Levite, in a shocking act of cowardice and self-preservation, pushes his concubine out the door to the mob. This act of betrayal seals the concubine's tragic fate. Section 5, A Night of Terror, the concubine's fate.
The men of Gibeah seize the concubine.
They subject her to a night of horrific abuse and sexual violence. The darkness of the night mirrors the depravity of their actions. The concubine's cries go unanswered. Her suffering is unimaginable.
Throughout the night, the men continue their brutal assault.
The concubine endures unimaginable pain and humiliation. Her cries for help are lost in the darkness. Her life is slowly ebbing away.
As dawn breaks, the men finally leave her.
She manages to crawl back to the old man's house. She collapses at the doorway, broken and dying. The rising sun casts a harsh light on the horrific scene. It reveals the full extent of the brutality she has endured.
The Levite emerges from the house. He finds his concubine lying at the threshold.
Section 6. The Levite's Grievous Act, a cry for justice.
The concubine does not respond. She is dead.
The Levite places her body on his donkey. He returns to his home. Upon arriving, he takes a knife and dismembers her body into 12 pieces.
He then sends one piece to each of the 12 tribes of Israel.
This shocking act is a cry for justice. It is also a calculated move to incite outrage and action against the men of Gibeah. The dismembered body serves as a gruesome symbol of the broken state of Israel. It represents the fragmentation and moral decay that has consumed the nation. Section 7. A Nation Divided, the Israelites' Response. The Israelites are horrified by the Levites' act. They gather together to discuss the atrocity committed in Gibeah. The gruesome message unites them in outrage. It forces them to confront the moral decay that has festered within their society.
The tribes demand that the Benjamites hand over the perpetrators of the crime. They are determined to see justice served. They are prepared to take action against their own brethren to uphold the law.
The Benjamites refuse to comply. They defend the men of Gibeah. This refusal sets the stage for a bloody civil war. Section 8. The Spectre of Civil War, a Nation on the Brink. The ensuing civil war is brutal and devastating. The Israelites, initially outnumbered, suffer heavy losses. They are forced to seek divine guidance before renewing their attack. After seeking God's counsel, the Israelites eventually defeat the Benjamites. They almost completely annihilate the tribe. Only 600 Benjamite men survive. The Israelites are then faced with the dilemma of how to preserve the tribe of Benjamin. They devise a plan to allow the surviving Benjamites to abduct wives from the city of Jabesh Gilead. This desperate measure highlights the complexities of the situation. Section 9. Moral and Ethical Dilemmas, a Timeless Tragedy. The story of the Levite and his concubine raises profound moral and ethical dilemmas. The Levite's actions, while ostensibly aimed at seeking justice, are deeply problematic. His willingness to sacrifice his concubine to protect himself raises questions about his moral character.
The old man's offer of his daughter and the concubine to the mob is another ethically challenging moment. His desperate attempt to prevent violence raises questions about the limits of self-preservation and the value of human life.
The men of Gibeah's depraved actions represent the darkest aspects of human nature. Their brutality and lack of remorse highlight the dangers of unchecked power and the consequences of moral decay. Section 10. Echoes through time, relevance and reflection. The story of the Levite and his concubine remains relevant today. It serves as a timeless reminder of the dangers of unchecked violence and the importance of justice and accountability. The story's themes of sexual violence, exploitation, and the vulnerability of marginalized groups continue to resonate in contemporary society. It compels us to examine the ways in which these issues manifest in our own time. The story also highlights the importance of strong leadership and the rule of law in maintaining a just and peaceful society. The dark tale of Judges 19 serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to learn from the past and to strive for a more just and compassionate future. It reminds us that the pursuit of justice and the protection of the vulnerable are ongoing challenges that demand our constant attention and action. The Israelites, spanning from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, gathered at Mizpah. This assembly wasn't for celebration or trade, but for a far graver reason. A horrific crime had shaken the nation's core, demanding a unified response. Leaders and representatives from each tribe assembled, ready to hear the details of the atrocity. An atmosphere of tension and anticipation hung heavy in the air. The upcoming discussions would determine the course of action, shaping the future of the Israelite nation. Despite their individual identities and territories, they recognized their shared heritage and responsibility. The stage was set for a momentous decision. A Levite, a member of the priestly tribe, stepped forward to recount his harrowing experience, one that would leave an indelible mark on the hearts of those who heard it. He described his journey with his concubine, seeking lodging for the night in the Benjamite city of Gibeah. They had hoped for a warm welcome and a safe place to rest. Instead of hospitality, they encountered hostility and violence. The townspeople's aggression was immediate and unrelenting. The Levite's concubine was subjected to a brutal assault by the men of Gibeah. Her cries for help echoed through the night, but no one came to her aid. The details of the assault were graphic and disturbing, leaving the assembled Israelites in stunned silence. The horror of the event was palpable. His testimony painted a bleak picture of the moral decay within the Benjamite city. The Levite's words were heavy with sorrow and indignation. The Levite's grief and anguish resonated with the assembled Israelites, fueling their outrage and desire for justice. They could not ignore the call for action. His loss became a symbol of the injustice that needed to be addressed. The Levite's story was a catalyst for change, a rallying cry for the people to restore righteousness. The Israelites, moved by the Levite's tragic account, felt a deep sense of sorrow and anger. The story of the heinous crime committed in Gibeah struck a chord with everyone present. United in their call for justice, they knew that action had to be taken. The leaders, with unwavering determination, raised their hands in agreement, signaling their collective resolve. They demanded that the perpetrators be brought to justice and that Gibeah be held accountable for the atrocity. The council members pointed towards Gibeah on the map, marking it as the focal point of their mission. A sense of shared outrage permeated the assembly, solidifying their resolve. The intensity in their expressions reflected their collective anger and determination to see justice served. The tribes stood together, recognizing the importance of upholding their shared values and traditions. Leaders shook hands and nodded in agreement, symbolizing their unity and commitment to the cause. They were determined to ensure that the perpetrators faced the consequences of their actions. The serious demeanors of the council members underscored the gravity of the situation. The Israelites' united stance sent a powerful message to Gibeah and the rest of the nation. Their stern expressions conveyed their unwavering resolve and the seriousness of their intentions. Their call for justice was a testament to their shared commitment to upholding moral standards. Leaders gave passionate speeches and the Israelites listened intently, fully aware of the significance of their mission. The cry for justice at Mizpah resonated throughout the land, setting in motion the events that would lead to the Battle of Gibeah. The unity and determination of the Israelites were evident as they marched together, ready to face the challenges ahead. The Israelites, united in their purpose, marched against Gibeah with unwavering resolve. They expected a swift victory, believing their righteous cause would ensure their ultimate success. However, the Benjamites, despite their smaller numbers, fiercely defended their city with great tenacity. The initial battles proved disastrous for the Israelites, resulting in heavy and unexpected losses. The Israelites, unprepared for the Benjamites' resistance, suffered significant and painful casualties. Their initial confidence was shaken as they realized the immense difficulty of the task ahead. The heavy losses suffered by the Israelites cast a long shadow over their campaign. The Israelites turned to prayer and consultation, seeking a divine path to victory. Section 5, Seeking Divine Guidance, a Turning Point. Faced with devastating losses, the Israelites turned to God for guidance. They recognized that their military might alone was insufficient to overcome the Benjamites. They humbled themselves before God, acknowledging their need for divine intervention. This act of humility marked a turning point in their campaign against Gibeah. The Israelites inquired of the Lord, seeking a strategy that would lead to victory. God's response to the Israelites' plea was to attack again, but this time with a specific strategy. The Israelites, reassured by God's promise of victory, prepared for battle with renewed confidence. Their faith in divine guidance bolstered their morale and strengthened their resolve. Section 6, The Ambush and Benjamin's Defeat. Following God's instructions, the Israelites devised a cunning ambush. They deployed a small force to engage the Benjamites directly, while a larger contingent lay in wait. This strategic maneuver played on the Benjamites' overconfidence, drawing them into a trap. As the Benjamites pursued the smaller Israelite force, they fell into the carefully laid ambush. The Israelites, positioned strategically, launched a devastating attack, catching the Benjamites off guard. The Benjamites, now surrounded and outnumbered, struggled to defend themselves. The battle turned into a rout, with the Benjamites scattering in disarray. The Israelites' victory, orchestrated by divine guidance and strategic planning, brought an end to the bloody conflict. Section 7. The Aftermath. Justice and Mercy Intertwined. In the aftermath of the battle, the Israelites' victory was tinged with a profound sense of loss. The echoes of the conflict lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the heavy price paid. While justice had been served, the cost had been steep for both sides. The battlefield was a somber testament to the lives lost and the families shattered. The near annihilation of the tribe of Benjamin presented a new dilemma: how to rebuild and prevent the complete extinction of one of their own. The leaders faced the daunting task of ensuring the survival of the tribe while maintaining the unity of the nation. The Israelites grappled with the complex emotions of victory and the responsibility that came with it. They had to navigate the fine line between justice and mercy, understanding that their actions would shape the future of their people. They mourned the loss of life on both sides, recognizing the tragic consequences of the conflict. The grief was palpable, a shared sorrow that transcended the boundaries of tribes. The near extinction of the tribe of Benjamin raised difficult questions about the balance between justice and mercy. The leaders debated fiercely, each voice echoing the weight of their collective conscience. The Israelites had to reconcile their desire for retribution with the need to preserve the 12 tribes of Israel. Acts of reconciliation began to take shape as they sought to heal the wounds inflicted by the conflict. Their efforts to rebuild Benjamin reflected their understanding of the interconnectedness of the tribes. The reconstruction was not just physical, but also a symbolic act of unity and resilience, a testament to their enduring spirit. Section 8. Rebuilding Benjamin. Preventing tribal extinction. The Israelites, determined to prevent the complete extinction of Benjamin, implemented a series of measures to rebuild the tribe. They allowed the remaining Benjamites to take wives from other tribes, ensuring the continuation of their lineage. This act of compassion demonstrated the Israelites' commitment to preserving the 12 tribes of Israel, even in the face of adversity. The Israelites, recognizing the importance of preserving their tribal structure, took steps to repopulate Benjamin. Their actions demonstrated a commitment to collective responsibility and the importance of preserving their shared heritage. The rebuilding of Benjamin served as a testament to the Israelites' resilience and their capacity for compassion. Section 9. Lessons learned, unity and divine intervention. The Battle of Gibeah offered crucial lessons for the Israelites. It highlighted the importance of unity among the tribes, demonstrating the strength that comes from collective action. The conflict served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of internal divisions. The Israelites learned the value of seeking divine guidance in times of conflict. Their initial setbacks demonstrated the limitations of relying solely on their own strength and wisdom. Their willingness to seek God's counsel led to a decisive victory, reinforcing the importance of faith and obedience. The Battle of Gibeah served as a reminder of the importance of upholding justice and accountability within the community. Section 10. The battle's legacy, a testament to justice. The Battle of Gibeah left an indelible mark on the history of the Israelites. It served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of internal conflict and the importance of maintaining unity. The story became a part of their collective memory, shaping their understanding of justice, mercy, and the role of divine intervention in their lives. The battle's legacy extended beyond the immediate conflict, influencing the Israelites' approach to future challenges. It reinforced the importance of seeking divine guidance and acting in accordance with God's will. The story of Gibeah continued to resonate throughout Israelite history, serving as a guide for future generations.
The Levite's concubine lay lifeless. A brutal crime had been committed by the men of Gibeah, a city within the tribe of Benjamin. News of this horrific act spread like wildfire through the Israelite tribes. The tribes gathered at Mizpah, their hearts heavy with grief and anger. They swore a solemn oath. No one would give their daughters in marriage to the Benjamites. This was a powerful declaration, a social and political ostracization intended to punish the entire tribe for the sins of a few. The oath was absolute, binding them together in a shared commitment to justice. The unity of Israel was paramount, but the heinous crime demanded a response. The consequences of this oath would ripple through the generations, testing their unity. The Israelites journeyed to Bethel. They wept before the Lord. Their cries echoed through the sanctuary, a symphony of sorrow and confusion. How could they uphold their oath and ensure the survival of all 12 tribes? The Benjamites were their brothers, yet their crime demanded severe consequences. The loss of the Levite's concubine was a tragedy. The brutality of the act shook them to their core. They mourned not only for her, but for the potential unraveling of their nation. They questioned their own judgment. Had they acted too rashly? Was their oath too severe? The silence of God weighed heavily upon them. They desperately needed guidance. They had come to Bethel seeking answers, a divine solution to the complex predicament they faced. They offered burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord, a desperate plea for divine intervention. Would God hear their cries? Would He offer them a way out of this moral quagmire? The Israelites inquired of the Lord, "Which of us shall go up first to battle against the Benjamites?" The Lord answered, "Judah shall go up first." This divine decree provided a sense of direction, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. The burden of leadership fell upon Judah, the largest and most powerful of the tribes. They now had a clear mandate to act. They prepared for war, knowing that they were acting in accordance with God's will. Despite the divine guidance, a deep unease lingered. They were about to wage war against their own brethren. The prospect of fratricide filled them with dread. They prayed for a swift and decisive victory, one that would minimize bloodshed and pave the way for reconciliation. The future of Israel remained uncertain. They marched towards Gibeah, their hearts heavy with trepidation. The battle against the Benjamites was fierce, and despite their superior numbers, the Israelites suffered heavy losses. The Israelites wept before the Lord until evening. They asked, "Shall we go up again to battle against the Benjamites, our brothers?" The Lord replied, "Go up against them." This reaffirmed divine support, but their hearts remained heavy. They knew that further bloodshed was inevitable. The Israelites devised a new strategy: ambush the Benjamites, feigning retreat to lure them out of the city. The plan was cunning, designed to exploit the Benjamites' overconfidence. The following day, the Israelites implemented their plan. The Benjamites, emboldened by their previous victories, fell into the trap. The ambush was successful, and the Israelites routed the Benjamites, slaughtering nearly all the men of the tribe. The near extermination of the tribe of Benjamin created a new crisis, leaving the Israelites to grapple with the unintended consequences of their actions. The Israelites had vowed at Mizpah that no one would give his daughter to a Benjamite. Now, facing the near extinction of a tribe, they were confronted with the devastating implications of their oath. They remembered that no one from Jabesh Gilead had been present at Mizpah. This oversight provided a grim opportunity. They sent 12,000 warriors to Jabesh Gilead with a chilling command: put every man, woman, and child to the sword, sparing only the virgin girls. The warriors carried out their orders with ruthless efficiency. Jabesh Gilead was destroyed, its men, women, and children slaughtered. Only 400 young virgins were spared, a grim testament to the brutal realities of ancient warfare. The 400 virgins were brought to the camp at Shiloh in Canaan. They were offered as wives to the surviving Benjamite men, a desperate attempt to salvage the tribe from extinction. The Israelites gathered at Shiloh. They realized that the 400 virgins were not enough to provide wives for all the surviving Benjamites. 200 Benjamite men remained wifeless. The elders of Israel were faced with another dilemma. How could they fulfill their oath and yet ensure the continuation of the tribe of Benjamin? The elders devised a plan. During the annual festival of the Lord at Shiloh, the young women would come out to dance in the vineyards. They instructed the remaining Benjamites to lie in wait and abduct wives from among the dancers. This plan was fraught with ethical complexities, involving deception and the violation of the young women's free will. However, the elders saw it as the only way to preserve the tribe of Benjamin without breaking their oath. It was a desperate measure born out of a difficult situation. The elders instructed the Benjamites, "Hide yourselves in the vineyards. When the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in the vineyards, rush out and each of you seize a wife for himself from among the daughters of Shiloh and go to the land of Benjamin." This plan, while morally questionable, offered a glimmer of hope for the survival of the tribe. They further advised the Benjamites on how to deal with the families of the abducted women. "If their fathers or brothers come to complain to us, we will say to them, 'Grant them to us graciously, because we did not take each man his wife in battle, neither did you give them to them, else you would now be guilty.'" This preemptive excuse was designed to avoid further conflict. The elders were willing to condone abduction to fulfill their oath and preserve the 12 tribes. They recognized the moral ambiguity of their actions, but saw no other viable option. The future of Benjamin hung in the balance.
The annual festival arrived. The daughters of Shiloh came out to dance in the vineyards, unaware of the lurking danger.
The Benjamites, hidden among the vines, watched and waited for their opportunity. The festive atmosphere was about to be shattered.
As we danced, celebrating our faith and community, the Benjamites rushed out from their hiding places. They seized 200 women, carrying them off to the land of Benjamin. The joyful celebration turned into a scene of chaos and terror.
The families of the abducted women were distraught. They cried out for justice, demanding the return of their daughters. The elders of Israel intervened, offering the prearranged excuse, pleading with the families to grant the women to the Benjamites.
We returned to our land with our captured wives. We rebuilt our cities, which had been destroyed in the war. Life slowly began to return to normal. but the scars of the conflict remained.
The abduction of the women cast a long shadow over the fragile peace. The forced marriages were a constant reminder of the violence and desperation that had led to their union.
The women of Shiloh, torn from their families and forced into unions against their will, bore the brunt of our desperate attempt to survive.
The incident at Shiloh exposed the deep flaws within Israelite society. The oath, intended to uphold justice, had led to a series of morally questionable actions.
We rebuilt our devastated cities. We re-established our communities, attempting to create a sense of normalcy after the chaos and violence. The process of rebuilding was slow and arduous, both physically and emotionally.
The captured women from Shiloh were integrated into Benjamin's society. They bore children, ensuring the continuation of the tribe. However, the circumstances of their marriages remained a source of tension and unspoken pain.
The forced unions were a constant reminder of the traumatic events that had brought us together.
The Israelites, as a whole, grappled with the aftermath of the war and the abduction. The incident forced them to confront the moral implications of their actions. Had they truly achieved justice? Or had they simply traded one injustice for another? In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. The absence of a central authority led to moral ambiguity and a lack of accountability. The story of the Benjamites highlights the fragility of unity in the absence of strong leadership. The tribes acted independently, often resorting to violence to resolve disputes. The oath at Mizpah, while intended to unite the tribes against injustice, ultimately contributed to further division and bloodshed. The lack of a king created a power vacuum, leading to conflicting interpretations of right and wrong. The story of the Benjamites serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of strong leadership, clear laws, and a shared understanding of justice.